This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Welcome, one and all, to the iRacing Esports Network. We have just gone green flag in the Majors Series 2.4 hours of Nurburgring. We are SimSpeed TV, bringing you the international region. MX-5s have just started the race, the 2.4 hour race around the full Nurburgring endurance layout. My name is Reese Gardner, and hopefully joining me in the commentary box is going to be David Haynes. Do you have us, David?
Yeah, certainly. I'm right here, very excited for this one.
Yep, certainly. Well, the MX-5s have just started. There is a battle between Brett Gerards and Jeff McPherson at the moment. They're going side by side in a very closely fought race in the MX-5 class down here at the Southern Hairpin. That's Brett Gerards going by Jeff McPherson. Now, this is a very interesting format we've got here today, David. It is the Predator format, which basically is like a handicap. This is a multi-class race. So the MX-5s are starting first, and then after that, they're going to have the Kias and Porsches released, the faster classes. And the intention is to make sure that there is a raring battle between all three classes on track at the same time, and they will be finishing at around the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Rather unique format. Definitely has the potential to be quite interesting indeed and bring a little bit of spice to maybe the last 30 minutes of the racing.
Yep, certainly. We do have times at 2 hours, 11 minutes and 56 seconds to go. The Kias will be released. Then at 2 hours, 1 minute and 45 seconds to go, the Porsches will be released. So the MX-5s have the track all to themselves for the next 24 or so minutes, and they'll have the time to sort themselves out. Then we'll get some big front-wheel drive Kia action on the track.
And I tell you what, that's actually interesting with the different specification cars effectively racing against each other. Some of that side-by-side battling we saw in the MX-5s, sure, they're battling each other for position, but if they're holding themselves up on their first lap and hurting effectively their ability to build out a gap before the other classes are released, that's something they might have to think about.
Yeah, certainly. The classes could definitely trip over each other here. And Blake Neck, currently at the front of the MX-5 field, has the advantage. They're just coming over Flugplatz for the first time. Easy flat in the MX-5. You don't really need to do much of anything through there. This car just sticks to the road like glue, and it doesn't have enough power to come unstuck.
Yeah, certainly. And these are cars that are known for quite a little bit of slipstream battling. They're difficult to separate, and from third on back, Robert Mason, Ashley Lear, Adam McLeod, Daniel Aitchison, all battling it out as they come towards Schwedenkreuz. They're going to go too wide.
Oh, very close through here. A little bit of lifting, a little bit of oversteer, and that's a car in the wall. That is the 73, Adam McLeod, just snapping the car through Schwedenkreuz. Of course, that's a very easy place to lose it.
Yeah, exactly. You come into that corner really fast. It's a little bit blind. You come over the crest, and if you're not on the preferred racing line, and he wasn't, that'll upset the car, and you've seen what can happen. It's a difficult place in any car to go too wide. Very, very unfortunately, in this 2.4-hour race, that's a lot of damage for Adam McLeod on lap 1.
Absolutely. We're currently on board with Ash Lear, your current third place driver. No, fourth place, my apologies. Currently chasing down Mr. Mason in the 968, and they're coming up to one of the parts of the track where it is incredibly difficult to put a pass on. It's a very slight lift through this right-hander, but then you brake hard, and Ash Lear just holding back by about a car length. He's going to have a bit of trouble coming up to this section because, particularly through hit and miss, coming up to the back stretch, it's going to be very hard to pass on this section of the legendary Nurburgring.
Yeah, this bit is a little bit follow the leader until you get past Bergwerk, and then there's an opportunity there, and then after that, it's even narrower, even more curving until we get to the highest speed section of the circuit, the Dottinger Hohe. So, you know, a lot of patience might be required now, and if you're Ashley Lear and Daniel Aitchison who've seen what happened to Adam McLeod, well, maybe you will be slightly more incentivized now to exercise just a little bit of patience. And of course, there's going to be pit stops and other things coming up in this race. So unless you feel the guy in front is really, really holding you up, it's not necessarily ill-advised to hold station just for the moment.
Yeah, you could even afford to save a bit of fuel coming down the back stretch after Bergwerk. Ash Lear, I think, won't be worrying too much about that because have a look at Aitchison right on the back of him here through Nicky Lauder's curve. And he's going to go right at the inside of Bergwerk. I don't know if he's going to be able to make that stick. He's going to mess up his exit here, get onto the grass, and that's going to allow Lear right back by.
Yeah, the exit out of there always so critical. In these cars, it's absolutely flat, then all the way up the hill towards Bravery Corner. So it's a long time on wide open throttle from the exit of Bergwerk in these cars.
Yeah, certainly. So now Daniel Aitchison has a bit of a gap back to Ash Lear. Both of them do, however, have the slipstream on Mason up ahead. Meanwhile, the top two... Hold up a minute. Yes, of course. I've just double-checked my timing. Will Leslie being promoted up into P2 as a result of McLeod's crash earlier on. And he's starting to close the gap a bit to Blake Nick, I think.
Yeah, it was out nearly as far as 2 seconds. It's now down to 1.2. Anything less than a second and a half, I think you'll be catching the car in front on the Dottinger Hohe because it's absolutely flat chat, full blast, full throttle, wide open for nearly a minute, especially in these Mazda MX-5s. And even in the other class cars, it's a very, very powerful slipstream all the way down that long back straight, coming towards the start-finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to remember a lot of it is, in fact, uphill. And there's only a few lanes that really work along there. It's such a bumpy old straight down the back there where you can see the old Nurburg Castle. These guys continuing to circulate, and Ash Lear right on the back of Rob Mason now. Unfortunately, he's come up to him through another follow the leader section.
Yeah, indeed. Not a whole lot to do here. And
Lear could be helped by this. Oh, not quite.
Yeah, indeed. So quite a lot more of this lap to go, and still, Lear comes wide, and they're going to be side by side with Aitchison and Robert Mason's mirrors. Both of them would just be Mazda MX-5.
Yeah, absolutely. This is really good, actually. Through this section, yeah, it is a bit follow the leader, but there's also room for a bit more line experimentation, which you can see a lot in the MX-5s. You saw that Mason took a wider entry there, but Lear went more straight to the inside. Lear's able to carry a bit more momentum through the corner, but he still can't attack. There's not enough space for him to make a move and make it stick at the moment.
Yep, he's got to wait until they come through I know half of the names of these corners, and some of them are eluding me right now, but it'll be after the small carousel, and then will absolutely be an opportunity to make a move. This is the closest racing we've got right now. Will Leslie still trying to hold on to Blake Neck, but these three cars, Mason, Leah, Aitchison, our closest battle, and as they keep fighting, I think Brett Gerards has a chance of closing in on this battle for third place.
Yeah, he absolutely does. He's actually classified on the timing, a part of this battle now. So Brett Gerards making his way all the way up to this battle for third place on track. They could really get hairy coming down the straight here. Gerard's run was really good through there that time. He is actually in slipstream range now of Aitchison. He'll be able to latch on to the end of this fight, and this is going to be a proper four-car battle down the straight. How good is this?
Yep, fantastic. Turning on the action before we then release the Kias and then release the Porsches. So Mason still leads, but now Lear is going to pull to the right-hand side. Two of them running side by side will punch a huge hole in the air for those cars behind to follow along. And it looks like they're all going to try and follow Lear for the moment. It could definitely be too wide as they come into the braking zone for Tiergarten.
Yeah, well, the problem there is that the track really narrows up. It seems really wide at this point, but you see, once they start coming down the hill, gradually narrows down to about 3 cars wide and a bit of room to spare. So a little bit of a traffic jam here. Leah and Aitchison side by side. Oh, sorry, that was Leah and Mason side by side. Leah won out coming into the corner, but unfortunately did not get the best exit. So this is going to continue on around the GP circuit.
Yep, certainly. And Blake Neck was just far enough ahead of Will Leslie to keep on holding that gap. So now third on to sixth here. And Brett Gerards is looking like he's going to try and make a move. Robert Mason wants to try and get that move back as well. All on into turn one. Leah will hold on to the lead. But I think Gerards will maybe just pull ahead into fifth. Maybe going to try and grab fourth as well.
Yeah, looks like it. I mean, I fully expected Mason to try and go up the inside of Albert on the, go up the inside of Leah on the exit of that corner, but ultimately didn't. Just taking his time with this, which is not a bad strategy considering this race has still got 2 hours and 13 minutes to go.
Yep, certainly. A bit of a gap further back, 8th and 9th, Jeff McPherson and Riley Curtis. So they absolutely do close up, clump up, and be difficult to separate with how powerful the slipstream is, especially on the longer, more flat-out sections of the circuit. Ashley Leah runs a little bit wide, and they're going to be side by side coming up towards the Schumacher S behind. Gerard's trying to hold on to 5th place from Daniel Aitchison.
Yes, indeed. It's a difficult section of track, the Schumacher S in most cars. It's pretty comfortably flat out in the MX-5, so that doesn't make it any less difficult. Mason having to get on the brakes early to avoid running into the back of Lear. I feel like this is going to be what we see for the next couple of laps because these guys are continuing to stay absolutely glued together. Aitchison has not been dropped, neither has Gerards.
Get ready for those Kias, though, to be released in about 15 seconds. Am I correct there?
Let me double check. 2 minutes 11 and 56 to go. So according to the timing, that leaves us with actually not that long. Kias should come out of the pits very, very soon. And we should be able to see them going out of the pits now in their starting order. Out they go, coming down into the first turn. Leading the way is Patrick Fleming in the 311 car. Kia's making their way through that very tight chicane, and of course they produce an excess of 350 horsepower, I believe. They're also front-wheel drive, so the drivers need to be careful on the throttle. They've also got to be careful about how those fronts wear down during the rest of this race.
Yeah, certainly. It's a car that's known for, 1, chewing through its rather small fuel tank pretty quickly, 2, needing quite a while to refuel, and 3, really chewing through the tyres, as you say.
Yes, indeed. So now, the Kia's coming through the Schumacher S and Fleming continuing to hold the lead and working those tyres very hard through the initial part of those turns. Now, when they come up to the MX5, when they come up to the MX5 field, I reckon it's going to be a bit difficult for the Mazdas who are battling with each other, because it's worth mentioning in the rules for this Predator event format, you can't make defensive moves against another class. So when the Kias come up to the MX5s, they will have to let them go if they make a move. If they're in the middle of a battle and a Kia decides to put one up the inside, they're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, precisely. We've seen that the MX-5s have already completed a full lap before we have unleashed the Kias. The Kias going to be coming at them quite sooner rather than later and trying to get a lap back. That's a very important rule to prevent maybe the Mazdas from running a rolling blockade and hindering the other class trying to get that lap back, or just, fighting it pretty hard.
Of course, so it's all going to end up making it interesting for sure. Meanwhile, as the Kia field makes its way through Hatzenbach for the first time, battle for second actually really holding up between Daniel Stevens and Robert Northway. These two having a real plonker of a battle, and Stevens struggling a little with the rear end there, but it's better to have less grip on the rear now, because it means the fronts are going to start coming into their own later on. Northway in the slipstream, though.
Yeah, indeed. Plenty of air over that little rise there. These cars pretty quick in a straight line, honestly. The slipstream behind that Northway's got, he could definitely see speeds approaching up to 270 kilometers an hour quite easily. Daniel Stevens in front, hitting 260 right now. They go pretty quick in a straight line, but they don't brake, don't turn as well as some of the other class of cars, as Daniel Stevens finds out through Schwedenkreuz, hanging it all out, but he holds on to that position ahead of Robert Northway. Behind them, Trevor Mack must be licking his lips because he's closing this gap down as well. Patrick Fleming's building out just a teeny bit more of an advantage as far as the Kias go.
Yes, indeed. Well, what Fleming needs to do at this point is just make sure that he sets those clean times, make sure that he keeps it on the track, but he's still going at a reasonable clip, because you don't want to make a mistake and fall back into the clutches of these guys. And as long as they are continuing to work their tires hard, as long as they're continuing to make mistakes battling with each other, then that's just going to work into Fleming's flavor. Favor is the word I meant to say.
And the way that the different classes have been released, the Kias are going to be catching those MX-5s a lot earlier than they would if all the classes were released at once and the Kias had to put a full lap on them. They're trailing the last of the MX-5s is even still before Bergwerk, and now through Miss Hit Miss comes the first of the Kias. It's going to be before the end of this lap that the Kias catch those Mazdas for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. These they're rapidly closing in. They are, and the first of the MX-5s that they'll come up on is Matt Hunter, who's just making his way up to Bergwerk now. So I'd estimate that the first of the Kias are going to come up to the MX-5s around the twisty bit after Carousel.
Yeah, definitely possible, especially this early point in the Kia stint where their tires are fresher. They'll be much quicker round the twistier bits than later in a stint where you really expect their pace on worn tires to drop off maybe even 5 or 6 seconds per lap. Even around a track like Daytona, we see quite significant tire drop-off. This is a circuit that can be just a little bit harder, a little bit more demanding on the tires as well.
Yeah, definitely. But the Kias will also have the advantage of that long straight. Their big strength is straight line speed. I believe the Kias are actually just as fast, if not faster, than the Porsche 911 GT3. That's the top class here in a straight line. So if they manage to time their runs correctly, the Kias might be able to get past most of the MX-5s that they'll face on that back straight. Looks to me, speaking of the MX-5s actually, Ashley Lear's managed to get away from fourth place back, who are now really in this tight battle pack, Mason, Giratz and Aitchison.
Yeah, indeed. That's a great break for Ashley Lear if he can hold on to it. He was definitely looking quick in the pack, worked his way to the front of it, now trying to get away. Robert Mason, again, finds himself a little bit the cork in the bottle, Brett Girat's obviously caught this pack, moved himself up right behind Robert Mason. He'll probably be the next of the cars trying to get through, trying to get on with his race. Mason doing absolutely nothing wrong. I haven't seen any silly defensive moves or any blocking out of him. It's just plain difficult to get past around half of this circuit, knowing how dangerous it can be, how narrow it is in points.
Yeah, absolutely. We're on board with Stevens as he watches these events unfold, and coming round to mini carousel. Rob Mason up front using all of those curbs, and it's really easy to overshoot this corner. You think you can take it quite fast, but you actually got to slow down a little bit more than you think. Looks like this is going to go down the straight for sure.
If you get spat out of either of the banked carousel corners here, it's not only rather embarrassing, it'll either cost you a lot of time or a lot of damage. Sometimes you can pop out of the rut in the carousel and you end up on the high line going the long way around, and that will cost you 2 or 3 seconds. And I personally like to call it the walk of shame.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems like a pretty good name for something like that. Meanwhile, the Kias have come up to the first of the MX-5s. Oh, that's the battle between Northway and Stevens just going by them. That has given Patrick Fleming a little bit of extra breathing room, but now Hunter's Mirror is absolutely filled with Kias. Very stressful situation.
Yeah, indeed. Still hanging the tail out is Daniel Stevens. I've gotten past one of the MX-5s, and they're going to close up a lot on some of them down the straight, you would imagine. Stevens does exactly what you were just telling us about. Pop out of the Kleinis carousel, goes wide, keeps it out of the barrier, but he's gone and lost a position to Robert Northway because he's thrown it in too hot to the carousel.
Oh, this is going to be awkward. This is going to be real awkward. They weren't able to make that move around the outside of the MX-5. On the exit, they've been able to do that. Now, David, it's a proper slipstreaming battle down the back straight.
Yep, behind. Stevens doesn't quite know which way to go. Northway's properly just holding a lane. Seems the moment Stevens pulls out of the slipstream, he's got no momentum to do anything with it. Speed right now for Northway, he's hitting 260 kilometers per hour. I think the GT3 Cup cars can do about 270, but you're right, that's only just a little bit faster. They're still side by side coming down towards Tiergarten, nearly a bump. They in the end, Northway's deeper on the brakes, but can he get it stopped?
Hanging the tail out in the braking zone. Absolutely crazy. Barely keeping control of that thing. Seriously, you ride on board one of these Kias coming into that braking zone, you'll see the driver on opposite lock 80% of the time. But Robert Northway ends the first lap for the Kias ahead of his rival Daniel Stevens. It took him a while to make the pass, but when he got it done, he made it stick.
Yep, certainly. So the Kias now completing their first racing lap, and we are something 30 seconds to a minute away from unleashing the fastest class that we've got, the Porsche GT3 Cup cars. And they provide some good racing. They're also a little bit quicker than these Kias, but crucially, over a race length like this, their pit stops are quite a bit quicker as well. So we might see some positions and gaps closed up through the pit cycles, as well as just out on track at superior speed of those Porsches.
Yep, absolutely. Coming up to 15 seconds until the Porsches are going to be released. They're all sitting there in the pits. And of course, Bo Albert taking the pole for the Porsches. Cam Dance just behind him, and James Foster, then Dominic Ferraris and Dane Burns. Top 5 for the Porsches, but out they go. And James Foster, Cameron Dance, and Bo Albert leading the way as the last of the MX-5s actually came around. Matt Hunter to start his first lap. About half a lap's worth of the GP circuit before these guys went out. So a lot of ground for the Porsches to make up.
Exactly. 2 hours now is what Bo Albert and Cam Dance have to chase down a 52-kilometer distance advantage that the MX-5s have already put in. So a lot of work ahead of them, but they've got the machinery to theoretically do it. And from here on in, the pressure ramps up and we see which class can take the overall race win here.
Yep, exactly. currently on board with Cameron Dance as he chases down Bo Albert just ahead of him. Of course, now this is for the class lead. Matt Hunter, the first MX-5, just coming through the chicane up ahead of these guys, so they don't have long to go till they come up to them, around about the Hudson Bucks sort of area. But
position behind them, Dominic Ferraris is now up to third for the Porsches, very quickly putting a move on James Foster. And those two are going to battle it out a little bit as Albert and Dance try and scurry away ahead. Here comes Foster back to the inside. Two corners, twice these guys have changed positions. Fair enough, they can race each other, but they need to remember they're also racing the Kias, they're also racing the Mazdas.
yeah, absolutely. They need to make sure that they're within striking distance of Albert and Dance, because if they get caught up in a mistake while lapping the other classes, Foster and Ferraris are going to be right there with them. So they can't afford to battle each other too much and lose too much time.
The way they've been released is very, very interesting. I believe we've got 48 entries from here, are spaced within the first about 1/3 of the Nordschleife. There's 2/3 of the track completely unoccupied because our Mazdas, our Kias, and our Porsches soon are all going to be mixed up together on different laps and need to get their laps back.
Yes, indeed. So Daniel Stevens and Robert Northway and the Kias continuing to battle as hard as they ever have. Once again, they're coming up to another MX-5. That's Dave Douglas in P7 right now.
Yeah, and where that car falls is critical for Northway. He gets through. Stevens has the inside, goes through as well. Clever driving, I'd suggest, from Dave Douglas, just to not get tangled up in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a look at how much Northway's using the curbs up ahead. He's really pushing hard. And so is Stevens. Through miss, hit, miss, the Kia looks absolutely horrific to be a passenger in at the moment. Look at how much these guys are working the rears. They're swinging that tail out on the entry of just about every corner, because what they want to do is try and wear down the rear tires a little bit more. So when the fronts inevitably wear down, they still have a reasonable balance in the car. Otherwise, it's just going to turn into an understeering aircraft carrier.
They really look like they've switched their brake balance for a rallycross style handbrake, but it's not making them that slow. Fleming in the, I guess, the lead of the Kias is still only 3 seconds or so clear of Robert Northway, not pulling out a huge gap. So Northway and Stevens, despite the theatrics, maintaining reasonable pace and I guess hoping to take an overall victory.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's certainly a possibility with all the bits of this format. We take a look at Brett Gerards once again. Goodness me, that's close between himself and Daniel Aitchison.
So the order of these three is effectively swapped. Remember, Mason was leading this, and then it was Gerards, and then Aitchison. Aitchison has gotten through. Gerards is still in the middle of the sandwich. Now Robert Mason back at the tail, but it hasn't separated them. They're all still stuck together as they approach probably the most memorable section of this circuit, the carousel, right now for, I think, the second time or third time for these class cars. It's a fantastic, very, very unique corner. You think of the carousel, you think of here. There's nowhere else like it.
Yeah, and you can push so hard through there as well. Hold on a minute. Did Ashley mess up the carousel? Because he's just lost the lead to Aitchison.
Yeah, he's had it. He did have a slide. He'd
Lost
done
third place,
the
sorry.
little walk of shame. He's managed to pick up a lot of oversteer through the carousel, cost him a lot of exit speed, and now Aitchison is through on him.
Yep, of course, there's me, because Blake Neck and Will Leslie are so far out ahead, I completely forgot about them. Sorry, guys. Doing very well in the top two there at the moment, but this battle for third place back, certainly not over by any stretch of the imagination, and I think Leah will be raring to get that place back.
The lead of the Kias is just approaching them now, so Patrick Fleming is now watching the back of Brett Gerards, Ashley Leah, and Daniel Aitchison. He's going to have to try and get through, and of course, first of the Kias coming through means that The others are just behind as well, Stevens and Northway. And here comes Patrick Fleming. Girazza is heads up, sees it coming. And now we've got to see, can he cleanly clear the rest of these Mazdas?
Yeah, don't forget, these guys can't make any defensive moves against Fleming. If he goes for a move, they got to let him go. But Fleming, I think very wisely, is just holding back. He knows that he has the gap to the other guys behind. He knows he can't get by them cleanly right now. He might as well wait a bit. The car's got the straight line speed. He can do it.
I'm also aware that the Porsches are just starting to catch the Kias as well. So early in the race, we're getting plenty of excitement. I expect to see a lot of moves from the Dodingahoa this time, as well as his battles within each of the classes. Aitchison is losing a lot of time to Lear as well. Soon, we'll see them all on that longest straight.
Look, it's brought the top 3 in Kia together. That's what that's done, because, oh no, Girazza's in the wall. He's done that at the mini carousel, he has. So our first casualty of the interclass battle, unfortunately, Brett Girazza through no fault of the Kias, and there has been a big fight here. Oh my goodness. Goodness me. There were cars all over the track. Top 3 in Kia came together with 3rd place back in the MX-5s. Lear, one of the casualties, and Aitchison a casualty as well. Replay on screen. We're taking a look at what happened.
Incident, I think, and it's always hard to pin this on one class or the other, but it really looks like your lead Kia maybe have understeered into the rear quarter of Daniel Aitchison, sent him around in what's a little bit of a blind corner. Lear, some of the other Kias know where to go in that. So 4 or 5 cars easily tangled up.
Fleming panicked there. He saw it was Stevens and Northway behind him, and I think he just went for the move where, you know, you'd be better off staying behind a little bit longer. He could have at least defended, but I'm not going to critique anyone's racing style too much. It's just, yeah, I think that might have been a little optimistic.
Yeah, certainly. So it changes up the order just a little bit in a couple of the classes, that's for sure. And the Porsches are now come through the Kias as well. So there's a lot going on in this phase of the race right here. We've still got an hour 53 to go.
Goodness me. Okay, so now, first of the Porsches making their way, have made their way past the first of the MX-5s. Dance and Albert continuing to lead that class, and we got MX-5s coming in to repair some damage. Girazza and Aitchison, I think, among those in the pits. Albert's made a mistake at the first chicane, so the Porsche lead could well be on in a few corners if Albert keeps making mistakes like that. Dance is just sitting behind him, ready to pounce.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at that. The gap about 3 seconds. Bo Albert's now gotten 1 lap back on the Mazdas. He's got quite a bit more work ahead of him still, but need to see 1 more flying lap out of the Porsches, because of course they started from the pit lane effectively, before I can take an idea of what the pace difference is. But I think we've seen about 10-minute laps out of the MX-5s, and from these Porsche GT3 Cup cars I saw an 8-minute 18 in practice from Albert.
Yes, indeed. So we're currently on board with Cameron Dance as he chases down Mr. Albert. Just getting a view of what it's like around the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit, hanging the tail out just a little bit. It's interesting to note how low grip the Grand Prix circuit is compared with the Nordschleife. Car just seems a lot more hooked up on the Nordschleife a lot of the time, and Cam Dance obviously finding that there wasn't as much front grip as he wanted.
Yeah, he's trying to get past D. Palmer here, and like we've already touched on, a lot of horsepower for those Kias. They put it down relatively well, especially early in a stint. So when the Porsches have got to try and get past them, they've not got a huge straight line speed advantage, and it's through the corners where it's difficult to pass that they are in fact the quicker cars. So Dance rides plenty of the curb and managed to get that pass done. But certainly the Porsches would find it a lot easier getting past the Mazdas in a straight line than getting past the Kias.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think as a Porsche driver, it'd be infuriating to come up on the Kias. Speaking of, Robert Northway and Daniel Stevens who currently find themselves up in around the lead of the class. Oh no, we've had another incident. Dominic Ferraris stopped by the side of the track. He's just gone back to the pits.
Well, he was third of the Porsches at one point. He's definitely battling for third and fourth. So let's have a look at that one.
He just lost it by himself, it looks like. Oversteered into the wall and then got collected by the blameless Kia of Wayne Hutchison. That's a real shame for Dominic. He was doing rather well near the top of the Porsches.
Yeah, indeed. That's a tough break. He did end up sideways in the middle of the race course, which of course not optimal whatsoever, and it's of course led to just a little bit of further contact for him, and he's clearly realised the amount of the extent of the damage that he received.
Yes, very true. Blake Neck and Will Leslie are still your top two in this one, followed by Rob Mason and Brett Gerards. The first non-MX-5 in the order is that of Daniel Stevens, your current Kia leader, a lap down. Or near enough. Meanwhile, there's your Porsche leader going by your MX-5 leader. Albert's just made his way past Blake Neck, coming up to miss, hit, miss. Nice clean work there from both of them. So we ride on board with Bo Albert, making his way along the northern section of the Nordschleife. Next car up ahead of him is Kinetic's John King. And this undulating section of track is one that's difficult to pass on, but you absolutely nail it. It's a very good feeling when you do manage to get it.
So here he is, trying to size up when he can make this move. He can't do it into berm.
Oh, that's
deep
not
on the
good.
brakes, a little bit of a tap. The braking differences, the difference in the braking points between the two classes of cars is huge, even though the straight line speed isn't. And that's caught Bo out, a little bit of contact. That's not what he would have wanted to have done, I'm sure. But nonetheless, it makes him look a little bit of the aggressor. It's a predator race, but yeah, you're not meant to do that.
Yeah, no damage on Albert's front end, which I suppose is a positive he can take away from that, but that really highlights the difference in braking performance between the Porsche and the Kia. The Kia has ABS, the Porsche does not, but the Kia takes a lot longer to stop. It's just using road brakes, I believe, just steel brake discs. I reckon... I seem to recall, David, the Porsche 911 GT3 has carbon brakes or ceramics.
I think so. Certainly, it's an option for the road cars that's rather popular with people who track them. So I think so. I had quite a good look at some at the Australian Grand Prix earlier this year, and I can't remember. But certainly possible. They're not as good as a GT3 specification, FIA GT3 spec car on the brakes, but they're certainly quite better than the Kias. And Cam Dance has also made his way past John King, but it was not easy for him either. So making a lap back now on some of the Kias is the Porsches, and we'll slowly see those leads unravel, and it will still be quite a while, definitely after some pit stops, before we'll really have a clue who of each of your different car leaders is really in the box seat. Well, I just could not tell you at this point.
Yeah, certainly. It's something that we're not really going to have a good pointer on until the last 15 minutes or so of the race. Albert, as we were just saying that, went by Stevens, so that's the Porsche lead that's past the Kia lead.
There's
Now
also a
both
large
have just got an
delta
entire lap.
for the exactly, just a casual little 5.95 kilometers of this Nurburgring 24-hour layout, little country drive. But yeah, there's also a very large delta between the pit stop times for the different classes, which has been accounted for, but a full service pit stop on these Porsches is just over a minute or so, and a full service pit stop to fill the tank on those Kias. You have a better idea than me, but it's approaching a minute 45 or something, is it not?
Yeah, something like that. Because the thing is, the Kia in real life racing was built for the Pirelli World Challenge, so it competes against Mustangs and Camaros, and I believe the races that it competed in didn't necessarily feature pit stops heavily. So what happens when you bring this thing into the pits in iRacing is iRacing have actually simulated someone bringing a jerry can of fuel out to the car and literally tipping the fuel into the fuel filler. Also, running out of the fuel in the jerry can, getting another jerry can, and starting to fill again. You pit the Kia, you will notice halfway through the filling cycle, or about 50 liters in, the fuel flow will actually stop. That's your virtual fueling man getting another jerry can of fuel.
Yeah, it's very accurately simulated, much to, I'm sure, the frustration of people trying to race Kias in events like this. But certainly, it means that they've got can have quite the advantage on the circuit before their last pit stop, and then after that, you'll really see through the final pit stop phase, the Porsches close up quite a bit. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Kias get very close to the MX-5s, then have to take a lengthy pit stop that costs them, more than a minute, and then they have to try and claw that back in the final stint. The dynamics of it, the different stint lengths, the different fueling times, all going to be very, very interesting.
It just highlights the importance of being careful and keeping it on the track in an event like this. If you end up making an error and there's some heavy damage to that machine, then you're not going to have a good time in the pits. Meanwhile, a battle we are currently focusing on. 27th, 28th, and 29th. So those guys really going at it on track out there at the moment. Shane Bowen, Mirko Dortanac, and Gavin Barber coming down into the first turn, and Barber's run wide. That chicane's so easy to mess up.
And different from the Grand Prix layout, and really only used in the 24-hour race. Different from the VLN layout, even as well. So we saw which driver was it? Maybe even Stephen Williams, one of the drivers, was in this pack. Ran a little bit wide in the Tiergarten and the chicane there, the final one before they come back onto the Grand Prix circuit. So we're having a look at some of the lead Porsches and how they were going through the traffic. There's a great, I hesitate to call it in-class battle, because really every car is racing against every other car, but in manufacturer battle here with these Porsches. Gavin Barber is ahead of Shane Bowen right now, Mirko Dortanac behind, but not a second to throw between these guys, and Gavin Barber bit sloppy getting towards the apex there. It's holding up Shane Bowen, but if Bowen can't get away past, then that's rightfully so, and now Mirko gets a run at them as well.
Yes, indeed. So almost potential passing move into this chicane here at the end of the Grand Prix circuit. Actually, the original layout of the chicane used to be the only form of the track you could drive. Almost a move there coming onto the Nordschleife from Shane Bowen, but he is going to have to wait once again. Of course, Gavin Barber now has a lot more grip to play with on the Nordschleife's surface, so we'll see how well of a time Bowen has from now on.
And really, who knew that spectator graffiti provided so much grip? That clearly has to be the difference between the Nordschleife and the Grand Prix layout.
Absolutely. So why don't they get a road painting machine out onto the Grand Prix circuit and just paint the whole thing? Just a giant river of white paint in the German countryside. Formula One cars will be setting 1 minute 20s.
Don't give anyone any ideas, because they'll sell it out to sponsors, and we'll be racing on huge logos of watch and beer manufacturers.
Yeah, of course. But either way, we do have a motor race going on at this track at the moment. Robert Northway carrying a great deal of damage on the front of his Kia at the moment, so something has obviously happened to him, and Daniel Stevens carrying now quite the lead. Actually, it's not that much of a lead over Trevor Mack. So this Kia battle, once again, heating up rather nicely. And James Foster of the Porsche is just making his way through that pack now.
Yeah, indeed. So I think some of those dents to the Kia, it probably survives them a little bit better than the Porsche GT3 Cup. Not optimal, but it really looks like getting away with a little bit of fender rearrangement.
Yeah, just a little. So James Foster's just made his way past Daniel Stevens there. And you are now looking, if you look at Daniel Stevens, at the battle for the lead in the Kias. There's Trevor Mack with a rather cleaner looking car bearing down on him.
Yeah, indeed. Trevor Mack was not in the top 3, but he avoided some of that carnage earlier on. Now he's basically second of the Kias, and you would say, just from eyeballing it, closing in quite quick now. Maybe he's looked after the tyres better. Maybe he's worn the rear tyres out better. We'll see. Certainly, expect to have a little bit of an advantage, especially in a straight line, seeing as all the panels are a little bit more factory.
Yeah, definitely seems that way. Daniel Stevens has brought it to the panel beaters a couple of times, I think, but they've beaten the panels, it seems. Coming up to the very quick section of this circuit, big lift, bit of a brake, couple of downshifts in the Kias through this left-hand kink. It's a scary corner in any car, but in a corner like the Kia, where you rather suggest that the car turn rather than make it turn, it gets especially terrifying.
Yeah, it's almost kind of got two apexes to it as well. You can turn in, feel good about the corner, and then end up going just a little bit too wide, two wheels on the grass on the outside, car stops turning, and Armco says hello and greets you. So now Daniel Stevens has been closed up within a second by Trevor Mack. And pretty good run through the carousel there from Daniel Stevens. I was worried about how the car was going to turn there, but it's I think in the straight line of the Dottingahua where we're going to have to worry the most for Daniel Stevens' lead on the Kias.
Yeah, absolutely, because Trevor Mack has got all of these corners to make up a little bit of time, and just as I say that, he's in the wall! I'm so sorry, Trevor. That is 100% commentator's curse. I take full responsibility for that.
He's just had a wiggle trying to get it on the brakes. It hasn't slowed down quite how he's wanted.
Oh, he's done it again. Oh, he just ran off the track again. Didn't hit the wall this time, though, David.
And exactly as you said, sometimes steering input is a suggestion for the Kia, and that's exactly how it looked that time. Couldn't make it stop, couldn't make it turn. It was a cargo ship headed towards port, and that port was Armco. And unfortunately, it was made quite an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Real shame. But now we look at Shane Bowen, who is still in the midst of this Porsche battle with Gavin Barber. And they're coming through. The section actually coming up to the long back straight. They've got a few more turns to go until that. And it's a very, very fast twisties, I like to call them. But I'm sure you're a bit more educated than me on what the exact name of the section is, David.
I think they're just coming into Ice Curve now. And they've got a car in front of them that runs wide off the circuit. So Barber through, Bowen through, and Dortanac through. Which Kia is that?
Dean Mole.
Dean Mole's been scared off the circuit, basically.
Well, he's P3 in class at the moment.
Yeah, and you imagine he might now be in a position to catch Trevor Mack after the... you assume some of the suspension would have been rearranged for that hit by Trevor Mack. It looks like for the Kias, it's going to be who's got the best looking one in the final hour.
Yeah, definitely. Again, we come back to the point, it's true in all endurance racing, but especially at this track, you've just got to drive it at 9/10 and keep out of trouble. That's what's going to bring you success more often than not around a place like this.
Yeah, these three cars for the Porsches, some of the best racing we've got wheel to wheel right now. Gavin Barber is still holding them off. Here comes the flat out section, the section you spend the most time throttle full wide in 6th gear, and you'll see Shane Bowen will have a chance to close it up just a little bit. Mirko Dortanac behind will get quite the slipstream as well. Might have been a change for position behind them as well with, I think I see someone dropping down the timing screen.
Ryan DeCartier McCarthy, I think that was. And take a look at that in a second, because Gavin Barber is really facing a lot of pressure from this damaged Shane Bowen. Have a look at how much Dortanac has drawn up in the braking zone there for Tiergarten.
Yeah, good job on the brakes. Good line through the chicane. He's now quite a bit closer to Shane Bowen than Bowen is to Gavin Barber. If he's just as good on the brakes into turn 1 on the Grand Prix circuit, he'll be closing that gap up nicely. It all stays status quo right now. Big slide from Barber, but it happens right on the apex. Nothing Bowen can do about it until he exits. Can he get the power down better? He can. He's got the inside for the next corner now.
Yes, indeed. Battle continuing on. And my goodness, what a fantastic fight this is. Coming down to the southern hairpin. Bowen continuing to maintain that lead he's got. And Gavin Barber now in a lot of trouble because Dortanac is lining up a move for him here at the southern hairpin. Can he make it work? Well, you can hold the outside around this corner, but I think Barber's just letting him go.
So pit stop time for the Kias as well. Daniel Stevens, Robert Northway, Trevor Mack, Dean Moll, all on the pit lane. And we'll have to keep an eye because they're going to need a couple more pit stops later on. I've got my eye on exactly how long Daniel Stevens is going to spend stationary in his pit box. It's been 1:20 already, and he's not done yet. Short fill from some other drivers, though, potentially. Trevor Mack taking 1:12 of service and back out.
Oh, now that is quite interesting, because if you want to try and short fill and undercut in the Kias, you're kind of playing with fire. Driving in the Raw before the 24 that iRacing does as a part of the lead up to the 24 Hours of Daytona. The Kia is a car in that race, and definitely from experience doing that, you don't want to short fill this car too much because you will spend a lot of time in the pits correcting that issue. If you need to fill up a whole tank, at Daytona International Speedway's road course, you can basically almost go a lap down. So it's a big gamble that Trevor Mack has played here, but it might work out for him. Maybe he's reverse engineering the strategy.
Yeah, certainly. If you know exactly how many laps it's going to be and you know how much fuel you need to take, then you could save a lot of time by not taking just one extra lap of fuel around a lap as long as this. So that changes the order of our Kias, and I think John King goes into the lead of them with Trevor Mack behind, Stevens now in third. So differing pit strategies really shuffled up the order there, and just with how long the pit stops are, we mentioned that earlier, we flagged it down, and yeah, that's shuffled up the order there. And I'm wondering in my head and aloud which we'll see first of the Mazdas or the Porsches. The Mazdas typically go longer on a stint, but they'd been racing for, what was it, 15 minutes or something before we unleashed the Porsches. Might see both of them on pit lane at about the same time, and I think in about 30 minutes time.
Yep, would assume so. Meanwhile, the last of the Kias making their pit stop there. Wayne Hutchison just coming out of the pits, ahead of Dave Douglas, who currently runs in position 5 overall. So still a lot of work to do. Meanwhile, got a car on the wall. That's Matt Hunter. He was further towards the back of the MX-5 grid. He's got a lot of damage on that thing. What's happened to him?
9th place last time he crossed the line. I think this is coming down the entrance of, I think it's called Schwalbenschwanz, and the steering looks very poorly responsive there. It's steered quite strangely into the wall. Could that be a technical issue of some kind?
It looks to me like he just caught the grass initially. That's what gave him the damage. The car was swinging around a bit. He was on the brakes. He got the right-hand wheels onto the grass when touching them, and that just sent the car into the wall.
Second watch of it myself, I think you could be right there. So he's just put 2 wheels on the grass while the car was already a little bit shaky under braking. and it speared him in not the direction he wanted. He's found the wall.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're back live. We're right on board with Robert Northway as he makes his way through Hatzenbach, bouncing over those curbs in the Kia, and you can see it's a good demonstration of the sheer power this thing produces. The way he gets on the throttle and the way it's able to just continue pushing forward, that turbo 4-cylinder working those wheels pretty hard.
Yeah, and he spent 1 minute 35 with his pit stop there to 1 minute dead for John King, 1 minute 12 for Trevor Mack. So he's filled that tank completely, taken a new set of tyres as well. He was quick earlier on, he's had some damage patched up as well. It's all looking good now. He can lay down some quick laps, he's got some track space, and he'll maybe save some time on a later pit stop as well. If John King or Trevor Mack needed track position, they've got it now. But Robert Northway has also now got a little bit of clean space around the green hell to lay down his own lap times, maybe get them back later.
Yeah, well, that's significant. I think Northway may come into his own coming into the second hour of the race, and particularly towards the end. We'll have to keep an eye on him because while Northway is doing a fantastic job at the moment, the race is certainly by no means over and until 90 minutes time, actually. An hour and 30 left to go in this one, so still plenty of time for errors to be made and for crashes to happen.
Yep, your top three Mazda MX-5s are Blake Neck, Will Leslie, and Robert Mason. Your top three Kias, as we were just talking about, is John King, Trevor Mack, and Daniel Stevens. That could not necessarily reflect their true order. Pit stop adjusted.
Northway.
Yeah, tricky moment on the approach to miss there. Does get through cleanly in the end.
Oh, goodness me, that was very awkward there. But it's one of those situations as a multi-class driver where you really face a bit of a dilemma. Northway was in an awkward situation there. He forced the issue and went up the inside, but his alternative was backing out a little too late and potentially ruining both of their races. So at that point, I think it was better to just let him go.
Yeah, indeed, and stewards have an eye here and there and laid out some pretty clear rules in the driver's briefing.
Oh, yes.
So I hope everyone abides by that. Just to wrap up what I was saying earlier, your top three for the Porsches is still Bo Albert, Cameron Dance, and James Foster. That battle we had earlier on separated out a tiny bit. And James Foster's relatively comfortable third of the Porsches.
Yes, indeed. We're right on board with Foster at the moment. Makes his way down the back straight. And this terrifying approach to the chicane that ends the lap. You're on the brakes the whole time through this sequence of turns and then straight back on the throttle, flat out through the left-hander. And that is the end of the lap. It seems simple enough, but it's one of the most difficult things on this track to get right.
Yeah, from sixth gear down to second gear in a long winding braking zone. If you come in just a little bit too hot initially, you can know full well that you're not going to make the corner quite a bit before you actually come unstuck. And that's one of the worst feelings, when you know you're going just a little bit too fast and don't have the space all the time to slow it down. You're not immediately in the wall, but you are kind of aware that you might just be a passenger.
That's it. And with that lap that he just set then, James Foster set the fastest lap of the race so far. First driver to set a time under 8 minutes and 30 seconds.
He set the fastest clean lap of the race, which is absolutely a credit to him, but it's not not quite truly representative of the pace. Last time around, Bo Albert was an 8-minute 23, 8:26 for Cam Dance, 8:29 for James Foster. He's credited as having
them off tracks, guys.
He's credited as having the fastest lap, but in reality, he's not going as fast as some of the other drivers who well, it's very easy to pick up an off-track being a little too ambitious through the S's that Foster is just coming up to here at the end of the Grand Prix lap. It's a place where you can get an off track and not end your race, whereas half the way around the Nordschleife, it's difficult to pick up an off track and not also pick up some Armco.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 75% of the challenge of this track. Yes, it's got an entertaining layout. Yes, it's got a lot of history. Yes, it's got curbs that can kill you. But the fact of the matter is, those walls are far closer than they are at most modern venues. So there's an extra element of risk there.
Exactly. Foster has got an MX-5 to pass through the hats and back, and very well behaved. No issue there. And far less of that awkward, which way are you going after you? Oh, no, I'm sorry, than we've seen in some of the other places. So Foster not held up there whatsoever. There's a Mirko Dortanax clearly had some problems. To see him dropping down my timing screen, have a look maybe what has happened to him, because he was racing very well earlier.
Oh, just went into the wall, man. Seems onto the entry to the back straight of the GP circuit. He just lost the rears bizarrely, and around he went.
Yeah, so trying to put the power down, he's upset the car a little bit on the inside curb, and the track conditions right now, it's 22 degrees Celsius. That's quite cool, that's quite grippy, and what can happen is if you bounce the car off the curbs and you have that much grip and it all goes away suddenly, the cars can actually be a little bit twitchier, a little bit difficult to drive when you have so much grip and you're used to the balance of the car in maybe slightly slicker conditions.
Yeah, that's it. If the well, really, the crux of it all is if you have more grip, then you got more grip to lose, right?
Yeah, and so maybe just coming off the curb there for Mirko Dortanac. It's bounced one of the rear wheels up in the air, maybe just momentarily, and that's been enough that it's sent him around with just a moment of inattention. I think he'll carry on just fine for the moment, but cost him some time there, and cost him 2 positions. And effectively, he's racing against some Kias and some Mazdas as well. It may have cost him positions to them, but we just won't know, and neither will he until, I guess, the last lap, really.
Yes, indeed. Dave Douglas, your current position 5 or so in the MX 7th. Sorry, he's 7th in the MX5s right now and facing a lot of issues. Halfway around the lap, he went into the wall, and he is now trying to coax that car back to the pits.
Yeah, there's a lot of crabbing with that car. It's not going quickly whatsoever. He's doing 80 k's an hour right now, trying to limp that car back to the pit lane. He's losing time very, very rapidly. He's got to be so careful looking in his mirrors every second that he doesn't become a hazard. Some of the cars that will undoubtedly be coming flying past him. It's the kind of speed difference he's doing. He's in the sector of the track where the visibility is the least, and it's the narrowest. So he's going to have to be so careful, and so is everyone else, who I'm sure will see how quickly they are approaching him and maybe understand that something is wrong.
Yeah, well, Bradley Matheson's going to be the first driver to come up to Douglas, and Douglas goes completely off the track to let him go. They've also got a Kia coming up on them, the likes of Patrick Fleming, your former race leader of the Kias. So should be short work made of that. Other than that, you have Bo Albert coming up on him, but I don't think it should be a problem between those two. Seems like Douglas is being very courteous and careful with the way he's going about getting this car back to the pits. So things should be okay from that perspective. Touch wood.
Yeah, Patrick Fleming gets past cleanly, and he is trying to stay off the racing line at the moment where he can. He's obviously not in the business of trying to be hit, but of course it's a difficult position that MX-5 finds itself in.
Yeah, certainly. And Fleming just coming up to him here. Oh no, sorry. I've gone back in time a bit. My apologies, everybody. But Bo Albert is going to be the one coming up to this MX-5 now. No, he's not. I am still back in time. David, help me. Bring me back to the present.
The past is a little bit nicer, maybe. Just stay there. But yeah, Bo Albert comes through the small carousel now and navigates it safely. I really enjoy the combination of the Porsche Cup car and this circuit.
Dance!
What do you think?
I'm so sorry, David. Cameron Dance, huge crash. Absolutely huge crash, and that's going to go straight to replay. He was actually coming up onto Mr. Douglas. I was worried about how they would interact, but it looks like Cam's just gone and hit the curb, gotten onto the grass, understeer, straight into the wall.
Nearly beached it on the curb, and I think that's the approach to Stefan Baloff-S potentially there. He didn't have a whole lot of the track to go before the Dodingerhur, and just in the bit where the cars get airborne, he's landed on the curb, gotten stuck on it, and that sent him into the wall, and now he's in sympathy with Douglas. They've both got cars where the rear wants to overtake the front.
Yeah, absolutely. That is no way the kind of performance that you want the Nurburgring. Patrick Fleming has just brought his Kia into the pits. Meanwhile, and he'll soon be joined by Dance and Douglas.
Yeah, indeed, Foster elevates himself into second of those Porsches, so he gets past the injured car of Dance. So Foster, if he can maintain a clean run, it's definitely on for a good result.
Yeah, Foster's done really well so far. He's been one of the cleanest cars out there so far from what I've seen of him.
Fastest clean lap.
Yeah, absolutely, and I will stand by that.
Yeah, I don't want to take that away from him whatsoever. That's an accolade of itself.
Yes, indeed. Well, Bo Albert is looking pretty untroubled out there in the lead of the Porsches right now. If we want to talk about overall results, Bo Albert has made his way up to 18th overall at the moment with an hour and 18 minutes to go.
Yep, and just completing his 5th lap counted. It's 6 laps for all of the lead lap MX-5, so he's still got to catch them and put another lap on them in the remaining 1 hour 18 minutes. And this being the 24-hour layout, I think a full stint for Porsche is 8 laps, 9 if you're very, very good on the fuel. So that is about when we'll expect to see the Porsches in after 8 laps.
Yes, indeed. That strategy from the Porsches should certainly turn out to be an interesting one, especially considering race distance. This race is supposed to be a distance race, not necessarily a timed one. It's supposed to be run around 14 laps. The result will be called at the end of 14 laps, regardless of whether or not that distance has actually been run. So the drivers will have time working against them as they get more towards the end of this.
So one of the natures of this Predator format, it's quite different to what we're used to seeing, is that unlike some endurance races where there's a lot of action at the start and then the fields get spread further out, really we've started with the field all on different laps, and now they're closing up together. So it's a little bit quiet for wheel-to-wheel battles now, but we can know with a very great degree of certainty that we'll have some wheel-to-wheel battles close up later on in the race. Dave Douglas does finally eventually get that car back into the pit lane. He will be able to repair that and get back out. He's lost a lot of time at trying to crawl it back to the pit lane.
I will jump in there and join you, David.
Yeah, so the number 10 car, hello
Hello, hello
Douglas,
everybody, welcome.
goes up on both wheels.
G'day, Fonzie.
Yep, thought I'd jump in there so you'd stepped aside there for a minute, Reese. Just,
Yeah,
Currently,
unfortunately, commentators have to make pit stops sometimes as
oh,
well.
they
Eh?
do. Yeah, I know all
You know
about
that
that.
full well.
I know that full well. Yes. Currently riding on board with Blake Neck, 28 seconds in front of the next person down the road, Will Leslie. So driving phenomenally well. I can tell he's definitely done some practice around here because he's hitting his marks every single corner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great consistency to his lap times. His best is a 1 minute 1, and his last was a 1 minute 2, and he's just keeping it uh, above that 10-minute bubble lap after lap. And Will Leslie, to his credit, still holding on to second place, but last lap
Yeah.
10 minutes and 5 seconds, just not with that same consistency as Blake Neck has in the MX5. Certainly, still a chance to be the overall victor.
Yeah, not a bad lap really for a little Mazda. Been fortunate enough to drive around this track about 2 years ago. Actually, it was a bit of an experience. I was too worried about crashing the higher lease race car that I got for the day though, because the XS was phenomenal, so I didn't really push on too hard. But yeah, still a lot of fun. So yeah, great track, and pretty cool that we have it in iRacing.
Yeah,
Pretty cold.
unfortunately, there's no reset key in real life. That would be
No.
great if that were the case.
Oh, well, it had just been raining too, and
Takes a long time to get your safety rating back in real life.
it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I didn't really want to have to make the phone call, to my parents, been like, hey, the excess was 20,000 euro, and I've just stacked it, Mum. I need some money.
Just quietly.
Just
Goodness
quietly,
me.
yeah. So I had a little It was a little Suzuki Swift too, an RS Swift, and one moment that was enough for me. I thought, no, that's all right. I need to
Well,
survive. So
well, I mean, there has been that meme going around. Race car backwards is race car upside down is expensive.
yeah.
Certainly.
Battle 4th and 5th in the MX5s, guys. Aitchison has been passed by Brett Garatz in the last just couple of corners.
We'll get
Ah,
back a
definitely
replay on
seems
that
like-
one.
Yeah, bit of damage for Aitchison. I'm not sure if that's happened this lap, and that's what's costing him this time. But certainly, he's clearly put those dents in it more recently.
Yeah, certainly. It's definitely doesn't look like he has full control of that car at the moment. Look at how he's working the wheel. That thing's
Second place
definitely got a
Leslie
bit of
in the pits
suspension.
as well.
Oh yes.
Lots going on for the MX5s all of a sudden. And here's one thing. Maybe Brett Garatz has already taken one pit stop, is now caught back and gotten back in front of Daniel Aitchison. Maybe that's what it is. Aitchison hasn't pitted yet. Blake Neck stays out in the lead, but now Will Leslie is in from second.
So we've
Well,
just
I
had
guess
Aitchison just slow down really, and let Brett go. So maybe potentially trying to save some fuel. I'm not sure.
Well, regardless, I think we can expect Blake Neck in the next, at the end of this lap. Surely he can't make it that much longer.
If anything's possible, Blake Neck can do it. Let's be honest.
He's had a pretty good run lately, hasn't he?
He has, yes, he has. Yeah, very good driver, and he's got pretty good pace going on at the moment. So certainly a bit of a gap. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he can hold on to it.
Off the top of my head here, I think for the 24-hour layout, an MX5 can do 10 laps. Blake Neck has just started his 8th. He stays out. Robert Mason stays out. So, assuming, starting with a full tank and all that, I think that's what we might expect to see. Daniel Aitchison clearly nursing some of that damage. He brings his car into pit lane. So we've seen quite a few early stops in the MX5s. And if that's correct on my numbers, they can probably make it to the end from now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. Well, yeah,
If you said a 14-lap race,
yeah.
and they could have made it to the end from about lap 4. Maybe that's what Brett Garatz did, pitting early. I could be wrong, but speculation.
Oh, it's very solid speculation. We'll have to wait and see. Ash Leah and and Aitchison were briefly showing up together on the timing screen, but that's because Lear's just gone by Aitchison. How about Ash Lear? He's been one of the real unlucky ones in this one. Through very little fault of his own, got tangled up in a multi-class incident, and now he's one of the guys having to fight his way back up.
Yeah, got the car repaired, but didn't have the opportunity in that early stage, I don't think, to put in enough fuel to get to the end, so he'll need
Northway.
another stop.
I'm so sorry again, David. Robert Northway's just retired. Massive rollover, actually, and it looks like he did it all on his own, too. So let's see what happened to Robert Northway. Oh, he just didn't have enough grip on those fronts after hitting the curb and just went straight into the wall through mid-hiss-miss.
Yeah, I think hitting the curb on the entry to the corner, it's really unsettled the car, hasn't let him slow it down enough before that corner, and it's just understeered into the wall. We've seen that. It seems so easy to get in too hot in the Kias, just run out of enough meters to slow that car down that the front wheel drive is willing to turn into the corners.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very quiet out there on track at the moment, but it's just bubbling under the surface. If you have just joined us, this is the Predator format, so all cars technically competing against each other despite the fact that they are technically of different classes. And lap 8 of 14 for our overall leader, Blake next. So our former Kia leader, Robert Northway, is unfortunately out. So the likes of John King and Trevor Mack and Daniel Stevens, they're going to be the ones to watch along with Dean Mole for the Kia's campaign.
Now, based on the numbers I just threw out with the MX-5s, a 14-lap race, and I said I'm pretty sure that the Porsches can do 8 laps to a full tank of fuel, means that we're now within the window where the Porsches could stop and make it to the end with a full tank of fuel. So if we're looking at the windows for the different cars to be able to make it to the end, I think Porsches can do it from this time by.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on our Porsche leader, Bo Albert. He is he's actually just started his 7th lap, so he'll be coming through next time by. We'll see if he peels off into the pits.
Dortanac in the 62 has been through the lane, and I don't see there was a whole lot of damage on that car. Maybe he's just seen the pit window open and decided to take it. Not sure about that, but certainly he was quick earlier on. He's now made a pit stop, and in theory, might just be able to make it to the end from here.
May have to do a bit of fuel saving.
Yeah, if there's any track you had to, I'd probably pick this over something like Road America.
Yeah, certainly. It's not. There's quite a few places around here where you can fuel save. Lots of long downhill runs.
Especially if you have a great flow through some of the corners from the carousel towards Stefan Beloff S, things like Wipperman and Brunchen. Corners like that, if you can carry your momentum through them well, there's just so many little places where you need to roll out of the throttle or apply a tiny bit of brake. If you just give it 15, 20, 25 meters of lift and coast for each of those tiny little areas, there's 20 or so of them that make up that section of track, 20 little braking zones. Then across all of them combined, you can save quite a bit of fuel.
Absolutely, and that could be the difference between 1 lap's extra worth of fuel or or having to stop again even. So you really got to keep an eye on your fuel numbers around a place like this in cars like this. John King's just pitted from the Kia lead. So he's stuck in the pits at the moment, getting that done. And it looks like we got one of the first of our Porsches in for a scheduled stop, Ryan DeCartier-McCarthy. Or is he just coming in for more damage? Because his car does not look in a good state.
It is his second time onto the pit lane. I'm not sure what he's going to have to get done this time, but for it to be his second trip onto pit lane so far this race is not suggesting it's going that well.
Yeah, certainly not. Real shame for him. But out on the track, looks like King is almost done with his stop, and Dean Mole, his teammate at Kinetic Swift, just coming in, getting his spare car. Remember, there is one fast repair in every majors race. So now Mole's getting his tyres and all of that done.
And of course, a full tank of fuel for the Kias. It's ample time to change the tyres. I think I could probably change some Kia tyres in 2 minutes with the right tools.
Have time for a bit of a smoko as well, probably.
I'll change what I said. I reckon I could change a tyre and eat a burrito in 2 minutes.
You could definitely eat the burrito in 2 minutes. We all know that.
There we go. So some of these guys who took the shorter pit stops earlier for the Kias having to take longer service now. So John King took 1 minute and 43 seconds of fuel that time. They definitely don't fill that quickly.
Definitely not. So once again, another layer to add to the final half hour or so of this event. We've seen a lot of casualties so far. We're just about to enter the final hour, and quite a few of the guys that we thought would be in contention for this have met their end through various misfortunate ways. That's just the Nurburgring. But it's like what Bathurst is to the Southern Hemisphere, the Nurburgring is to the entire world, I guess.
Yeah, nearly enough. A lot of drivers, a very, very healthy amount of respect for this track. Not the least of them being Jackie Stewart, who I was watching some interviews with the other day. 3 Grand Prix wins around the Nurburgring and still didn't like it that much.
Yeah, I did find it interesting that he still maintained that opinion of the track even after being so successful at it. I mean, Stewart, he was obviously very passionate about his safety, and he's responsible for a large portion of what modern motorsport safety is, and, you know, full credit to him for that. And I suppose he just continued to see that the Nürburgring Nordschleife, spectacular track though it is, it's probably never going to be up to the safety standards of current motorsport, but at least to the level that Stewart drove in. But it still provides an awful lot of entertainment in this kind of racing as well.
Yeah, the risks are significantly diminished with some more modern safety advances, both in, well, they've got guardrails now, which they didn't have.
Yeah.
Some of the times when Jackie Stewart raced here, it was just...
And bigger gravel
you go
traps.
off, you're hitting a tree, and there are quite a lot of trees around here. And so even that and then advances in vehicle safety, of course, racing GT cars around here these days, relatively safe, especially in consideration to open wheel cars back in the day. But it's still, as Fonty has rightly pointed out, can be a very, very expensive place to race cars if suddenly the car you were driving is no longer driving.
Yes, of course. Meanwhile, continuing to look at Matt Hunter on screen, and he's actually managed to get all that damage fixed. He might have jumped into his spare car there, David. He is still out there on track, just outside the top 10 overall.
Yeah, looks like it. I have to go back and look at some of his previous laps to see how much time he would have lost crabbing that thing back. But he's back out there now, maybe still struggling to get to grips with his new car. nonetheless, he still is in with a chance at a result here. Looking, where is the next car of a different class behind him?
Looks like it might be Dean Mole.
Yeah, I'm seeing that maybe even John King in Kia will rather shortly be passing him. So an hour to go, and Hunter will be passed by the first of the Kias.
Yes, indeed, and it's something that that poor Matt has had to deal with a few times in this race. I remember even more towards the start, he was one of the first cars that that the Kias and the Porsches would come across. So it might be a bit of deja vu for Matt Hunter. A little bit of oh no, here we go again.
Yeah, this time there's no blue flags though. They're on the same lap as we are, just a couple seconds away from just 1 hour left in this race.
Yes, indeed, and we hit that mark right now. So we have 59 minutes and 52 seconds to go in this race. 2.4 hours of Nurburgring. And it's still a an all Mazda MX-5 top 7 overall.
Yeah, good consistent performance from Blake Neck, from Robert Mason, and even Will Leslie. It means that those guys, I'm sure, will still be the top of the overall standings till we get quite closer to the end of the race. Will Leslie in third has taken what I think is probably his final pit stop. Blake Neck and Robert Mason still to take their final service, and probably, I think either this lap or next, we'll see the Porsches in the pit lane to take their final stop. I'm not going to take a guess at how many the Kias will need. Maybe they'll get away with 2, or do you think they might need 3?
It's difficult to call. I'd probably hazard a guess at 3 stops, because I remember you could barely make it on 2 stops in the Raw before the 24. So I reckon the Kias, if they don't have to pit again, they'll at least be borderline.
Yeah, I think saw some short fills, some splashes earlier in the race. That could be from drivers expecting 2 full stops and a splash. I guess time will tell, but certainly those drivers are aware of the limitations of the fuel fill rate and the fuel burn, and I guess relatively small tank of those turbocharged Kias. Bradley Matheson entering pit lane for his first and presumably final stop from 7th place.
Yes, indeed. And Matheson obviously getting those tyres changed. The MX-5 is one of the easiest on tyres out of any car in iRacing, but still a performance advantage to be taken from doing that. So that's perfectly reasonable there from Matheson. Trevor Mack also coming in from the Kias, as is Daniel Stevens. So this is going to certainly work out interestingly for John King. He's not that far behind them, just coming through the Stefan Beloff S at the moment. Do you reckon he'll be level with these guys when they come out of the pits?
You know, if the handicap in the Predator race has been done correctly, and some of these Kias are so close to the Mazdas already, you'd really have to hope there's still 2 pit stops remaining for those Kias.
Yeah, certainly, because if there's I would reckon at least like a splash or something like that would be necessary, because the Kias, as you say, they're a very thirsty car. Trevor Mack and Daniel Stevens, they are still stationary in the pits. You've also got to remember the sheer length of the pit stops for the Kias as well. That, I think, equalizes it out a little bit. These cars spending nearly 2 minutes in the pits for a full stop. John King just made his way past the Grunhall restaurant. on the back straight. So this is actually going to be close for the top 3 in Kia, David.
Yeah, absolutely right. It will. King has this one last braking zone before he can open up the taps on that engine. He has that opportunity right now. Stevens and Mac, well, Stevens
Mac is
still
away.
stationary. Mac just rolling now. King flying down the pit straight. Where will it be? This will be close, but I think King will just get it.
Yeah, looks like it. He's just managed to get it as they come into the braking zone. Well done, John King, on that little strategy play. We'll have to wait until the end of the hour, though, to see where that puts them. So Mac out, Stevens now out as well. So that's your top 3 in Kia at the moment, and it looks like once again we got a battle on our hands.
Yep, no doubt. And right now, my eyes are on our leading Porsches. Bo Albert has completed 7 laps, will be finishing 8 at the end of this. That's how long an average driver will take a full tank of fuel for the Porsches. I think we'll see Albert, Foster, and Dwayne Burns in right now, and Bo Albert coming through Tiergarten now. Let's see. I want to see, does he turn onto the pit road this time? The average driver wouldn't have an extra lap in it. He doesn't. So the first of your Porsche leader into the pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely. All the way down to 60 kilometers an hour for this pit lane speed limit, hard on the brakes. And that engine running the softest that it has for a very long time, in excess of 1.5 hours. We'll see what Albert can do. One of his main oh, yeah, there we go. Bo knows he's on the broadcast, just doing the old flashing lights thingo. His main competitor, Cameron Dance, unfortunately won't be facing up against him. Dance actually retired from the race just a few minutes ago, so very unfortunate end for Dance's race. And in terms of his championship, it's not doing him any favors either. He's one of the guys in contention.
Yeah, obviously we saw the incident that caused him to use up his fast repair, his spare car, if you want to call it that. So if he's had any other trouble that would necessitate lengthy repairs, well, there's no way out of them. Bo Albert gets going again. I don't think I saw that car go up on the jacks. 32 seconds stationary. That's just fuel for him. He's taking 1 set of tires the entire race distance. Of course, the Porsche Cup cars, they fuel and then take tires, and he's decided the 25 extra seconds for a set of tires, not worth it for the 6 laps that remain for him. Blake Neck, your overall leader, also on the pit lane.
Oh, yeah, true. So there we go. Neck giving way to James Foster there in the pit lane just briefly. But you do make a very good point about Albert's tyres. I reckon he's got enough of a gap over the likes of Foster, etc., that he can afford to just cruise around on those older tyres and not push them too hard, and he'll still be able to have a good lead as Blake Neck comes off the jacks and back out onto the track.
Now, I've already suggested that the track temperature is quite cool, which in theory is nicer to the tyres, so that definitely plays into it as well for, I guess, Bo Albert's decision for that. You know that Albert is now on the same lap as Neck, but basically the whole thing behind, he's now got this last 52 minutes to try and put a whole lap, claw it back on Blake Neck if he wants to be the overall victor.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's definitely something that can be done. In the midst of a track like this, got 5 laps worth of racing or thereabouts to go around here. Considering how much faster the Porsche is than the MX-5 around here, in excess of 1.5 minutes.
Yep, so it's gonna get spicier, it's gonna heat up, and we've now had final pit stops for all of, well, we've had at least one pit stop for all of our Mazdas now. In fact, there's no one out there who hasn't taken a pit stop now. So, final phase of the race effectively is where almost 2/3 done, 1/3 to go. Not quite there yet, but it's drivers we're hoping they've calculated their fuel correctly, that the strategy they've settled on is the right one to see where it all shakes out right at the end. I still think a Kia, they're in a very good position. They've gotten very close to the Mazdas. They're at a fuel disadvantage still need some time on the pit lane. They've done a very good job, the leading Kias, of closing the Mazdas down.
Absolutely, it's been a good run from the top Kias. Mac and King actually very close together on track at the moment, and Stevens looks like he's actually fallen back a bit. So this is your top two battle in Kia at the moment. John King versus Trevor Mack. For one of the fastest and scariest bits of the track, no less.
Yeah, so King, we saw, had Mack rejoin the circuit behind him after their pit stops, but that means that there's fresher tyres for Trevor Mack than John King right now. The difference is only one lap, but that one lap is 26 kilometers of a very, very demanding circuit. With some lovely little bank
it's basically
sections like
5 laps of any other circuit.
Precisely. So Trevor Mack had done a great job to try and close up King. He's got the slightly newer tyres. He'll know maybe he'll need less fuel later in the race. We'll see. Who knows? But it closed up right a lot, as you'd mentioned it. And now here, John King looking a little bit more comfortable, approaching Lipperman, and they're about to catch a Mazda. Let's see how that falls for them, because that could hinder or help John King in his battle with Trevor Mack.
Absolutely could. Well, Bradley Matheson lets King go. And, that was a good decisive move there. But unfortunately, Mack is having to hold back a little bit here. Can't make his way past Matheson in this section. So King has been given a free ticket. Mack going by, but that is some time that he'll have to work pretty hard to get back.
And that's for overall position. Bradley Matheson's gone from 7th overall to 9th overall as these two have come through. The gap that was maybe half a second is now 3 from John King to Trevor Mack. He's done the right thing by not being impatient, not throwing his race away, not throwing another driver's result away either. But it's cost Trevor Mack just a little bit. He can still see his competition in front, though.
Yes, indeed. And, of course, he has got those fresher tyres to work with, so we should see a little bit more there from Trevor Mack in the remaining 48 minutes of this race. Taking a look at the pit stop times, actually noticing between our MX-5 leaders, Will Leslie had a 3-second shorter pit stop than Blake Neck.
Yeah, both of them have spent almost the entire race racing by themselves, not in a pack. You can't give that to Will Leslie to say, oh, he had some slipstream or something to help him save some fuel. So either Blake Neck has overfilled or is more of a lead foot, or one of them has, or Will Leslie has underfueled and miscalculated. I guess we'll know later on. It's not a huge discrepancy, 41 versus 44 seconds. Will Leslie definitely looking like he's tried to trim his fuel drop as fine as he can to how much he thinks he's going to need to complete the race distance.
Well, it's an easy thing to do in the MX-5s because, the bloody thing sips fuel as it is. So it's not much of an adjustment to your fuel numbers to get an extra lap or two. And in the end of it, it doesn't cost you much time. So you might as well go for a little bit more fuel in the MX-5s versus trying to undercut if you're in the position that these guys are in at the moment.
Yeah, certainly. Trevor Mack done a good job of closing up some of that gap. I do like watching the Kias race door to door. They've got a unique sort of characteristic to them, and it's kind of entertaining to watch people try and dance the ungainly things.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The Kia being a front-wheel drive machine, of course. There are strong hints from iRacing that we will be getting another front-wheel drive race car very soon.
They've used the 3-letter acronym on the forums.
Yeah, they certainly have. We'll have to wait and see how that goes, but certainly hyped for that. But a big driving characteristic of front-wheel drive race cars is you have to have a loose rear end. You have to be able to hang the rear end out on entry, whether you do that by stiffening up the rear end, softening the fronts, or putting the brake bias all the way back to the rear. As long as you get those rear tires working and sliding a bit on the road surface, you will be in happy times with a car like this. So the way a lot of these corners are attacked in a front wheel drive car, very different to what you see in other classes of racing.
And the Scandinavian flick in front wheel drive rallying, an absolute staple of trying to get a front wheel drive rally car to turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Little wiggle on entry to get the rear end kicked out. You don't really see it too much around here at the Nordschleife, but maybe if a couple of these drivers were a little more adventurous, we'd see some stuff like that happen.
Touring cars on rally cross circuits, please.
Oh, absolutely. I'm up
No,
for it.
no, maybe not.
Oh, next huge ass hosted event, David. Do it.
We're not Max fans.
Do it, boy. It wasn't a request, it was a command.
I shall consider.
Yeah.
I shall consider.
Much chin stroking on the other side of that mic, I can sense.
Yeah. Bo Albert, he's on the same lap as your overall leader, Blake Neck, now, so I can get a good gauge on the gaps and how quickly they're closing. And we believe neither of them will take another pit stop. So with 6 laps to go, Blake Neck is 7 minutes 20 seconds ahead of Bo Albert, who will close about 1 minute 40 seconds each lap. Bo's got a chance right now. He's still, more than 7 minutes behind, but he's got a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. We just need to keep an eye on how he negotiates any traffic that comes his way, because currently sitting in 12th overall. Next car ahead of him is Dean Moll, and he's just come out of Hatzenbach there.
Yeah, because as the current lead of the Porsches, he spent a lot of the race trying to get laps back on Kias, on Mazdas, and now he's at a point where a lot of the cars he's catching, it's for position, it's for overall position effectively. Now, he's not quite getting to what we'd quote-unquote call the class leaders right now, but he is climbing up the overall standings, as is John King as well. So it's reaching that point of the race that the Predator format is all about, when the hare catches the tortoise, so to speak.
Yeah, that's it. And that's what it's all about, really. It's the tortoise and the hare. If you're allowed a bit of a head start and you've got it calculated correctly, remember Mike, of course the lead admin of the Majors series, he's been doing this Predator format thing for a while. There's been a few previous editions of this, so he'll have the format worked out pretty well. And the aim is to have all the classes fighting for position on the last lap of the race, which would certainly be a spectacle coming into Tiergarten.
Yes, no doubt. Particularly were it between a Kia and a Porsche, because if on the final lap for overall position, the Kia decided they didn't quite want a Porsche to get past them, they'd have a lot greater chance wheel to wheel of making it difficult than the Mazdas that have a significant straight line speed disadvantage. The straight line speed difference, the speed out of the corners putting the power down, is, sure, the Porsche's got an advantage, but it's not out of the realms of possibility of a Kia to make life difficult for a Porsche on the last lap.
Absolutely, and if the Porsche does get past on that fast section, there's also a fair chance that the Kia might accidentally miss the braking point and forget how long the car takes to stop.
Battle on circuit here. Trevor Mack has closed that gap up once again, and this is where they were really close through Bravery Corner, through Mut Curve last time. Trevor Mack, I think, gets the power down a little smoother here. So once again, these guys are within a second, and the fresher tires of Trevor Mack, maybe he's just more confident as well. He's closed this gap to John King down. We've got a great battle to watch once again, I hope.
Absolutely. Coming up to Carousel at the moment. This is where battles can be made or broken. Just aiming for the taller trees, as Juan Manuel Fangio said decades ago. Both of them making it through very nicely. That was a nice clean run through there.
Yeah,
Actually,
really get hooked up.
David.
What do you think?
I was going to say Stephen Williams and the Porsche's just coming up on these guys, so we'll be able to see shortly a demonstration potentially of the Porsche and Kia down the straight, like you said.
Yeah, Stephen Williams, had some problems earlier. He's one lap off the same lap as these Kias, but it will, surely we see them go through these corners here. Approaching Brunchen right now is one of the YouTube corners. Features very heavily. No, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong part. Brunchen's a teeny bit further up, but it's one of those YouTube corners that features very heavily in crash compilations. We get a great idea here of through the corners, through the braking zones, on the power down, where the speed differences is between the Porsches and the Kias. Williams is closing them up a little bit better onto brakes, a little bit better onto turn in, but power down, straight line speed, pretty similar. Makes them very, very difficult to pass through these sections here.
Yeah, exactly right. And they put their power down in different ways as well. The Porsche being, of course, rear-engined, slung over the rear axle is that flat six Porsche power plant. You've got to mash the throttle on the exits to get that weight on the rear and get the car rotating. Whereas with the Kias, you really got to be easy on the throttle. Almost got to drive it like you would a V8 supercar. Be very careful on the throttle. You don't want to overwhelm those tires because they're all the grip you have.
So now he's stuck behind the two Kias through Kleiner's Carousel, and he clobbers some of the curb on the inside. He threw it into the corner, and he gripped maybe a little bit more than he was thinking. He's cut a little bit too much of the corner, in a corner where you really can't cut it with how violent the curbs are, with the way the banking is there. And now he waits for the straight, puts the power down, and we'll see the speed difference in a straight line. I think with a little bit of slipstream help, the Porsches can bang against the rev limiter in sixth gear at 280 kilometers per hour. But the Kias, in similar conditions, can reach 270, maybe 275. My eyes on John King. What's he doing?
Have a look. Mac's gonna blast by him here. He's used the slipstream of that Porsche to his advantage perfectly. Lead change.
Oh, it gets on the grass. It's wiggling.
Oh no! Oh, that's such a shame for Trevor Mack. Oh, you just gotten the lead, and he has it taken away from him. The car just got loose, dude. Oh, that's the worst place for it to happen as well.
He's just, I think, maybe been caught out by the speed that he's gotten in the slipstream. He was doing 277 kilometers per hour. His rear tires have just given up as he's following in the aerodynamic wake of the Porsche in front at a speed surely greater than he's taken that corner all race. Little wiggle, a little bit of grass, huge damage. Thankfully, he's close to the pit entry. But, he'd taken the lead in his class, and boom, it all has disappeared. And we saw it coming. We saw it happen. Unfortunate.
Yeah, very much so. And you got to think with the minuscule amount of rear wing the Kia has to run in order to free up the rear end through a corner like that, you really got to be careful about aero stability. Unfortunately, Trevor Mack falling victim to that. Not much downforce pinning that rear to the ground, but when you need it the most, unfortunately, that was when it gave way.
He opened up the corner as far as he could. He took a wide entry. He got to the apex, and he tracked out, and there just wasn't any more racetrack out there. Tapped the grass. At those speeds, with the tires the way they were, he almost needed a tap on the brakes. His straight line speed was massive.
Absolutely. And with that, Trevor Mack's actually retired. So John King has a massive lead in the Kias, but Daniel Stevens, he's got to continue to watch out for him.
Dean Moll is in the pit lane now with 4 laps to go. That's how long the Kias have been going on a tank of fuel. He can make it to the end from here. Right now, the window opens for Kias to pit and get to the end.
Yeah, in the last 36 minutes of this race, so we'll have to keep a lookout for Mole, see how he does. He's getting new tyres put on that thing, which, you know, it's something that you take at every stop in the Kia because of how long the fuel takes, but Mole still stationary for quite a long time. You know, his tyres are done. All of the tyre changes back in the garage having a coffee by now.
Yeah, and Mole, of course, is going to have to fill that tank to the brim right now because he's just at the start of that window to get to the end. This is not a splash. This is a last full service. I think he took a splash earlier in the race and now been stationary longer than a minute. He'll get going sooner rather than later, but he has already been passed by Bo Albert, who's now up into 9th overall.
Yes, indeed. So Albert continuing his charge there. Remember, he is one of the drivers that really wants this overall win. So Albert, the next car for position out on track for him is Daniel Stevens, P2 in the Kias. He's just coming through. Corner name, please, David.
We were looking at Stevens, you said?
Yes.
So his corner after Schwedenkreuz is Arenberg, and now he's coming down to Fuchsrohr, I believe.
Oh, I love being educated. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful feeling. I didn't know something, and now I do.
What a time to be alive.
And in all likelihood, I'm probably going to forget it in the next 5 minutes, so I'll have to ask you again.
I know maybe 20 or 25 of the corner names around here, and they're all quite rusty. We started
it's still
this
23
broadcast.
more than I know.
We started this broadcast, and I couldn't find Vipperman, couldn't find Stefan Beloff S in there. So they're all coming back to me, and that's great because I do love this circuit. And when things go well for you around this circuit, you are having a very, very good day. It's just when things aren't going well for you, this circuit is an absolute heartbreaker.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the guys that's enjoying a particularly good time at the moment is our overall leader, Blake Neck. He's just cruising down the straight at a couple of ticks under 200 kilometers an hour. Nice Autobahn speed in that MX-5.
Have we gone and jinxed Daniel Stevens because he's in the barrier?
Oh,
he's
no.
made a mistake.
Oh, no.
Very, very shortly going to be passed for position by Bo Alberts at second place in the Kias. These Kias are having a very, very rough run of. They look super tough to drive around this circuit.
Yeah, replay on at the moment of Stevens' incident. That was a fair whack that he gave the wall. Again, just losing it under the brakes because it just comes back to the rear end of these Kias being so borderline as they have to be. Stevens just getting caught out. Just tagged the curb and then hit the wall right into the tyre barrier. Looks like he actually hit the wall 2 corners before that as well. So what we saw was just the end of Stevens' incident there when I first came to him.
Tough break for him. He's still trying to keep that car on track and rolling, but he's no doubt lost a lot of time, lost some performance out of that car, and it looks even less stable under braking. And you know better than me that they're not that stable under brakes to begin with.
Oh yeah, certainly not. Especially around a track like this where you're doing a lot of your braking through corners. So the Kia drivers have really had their work cut out for them. I would argue that the Kia is the most difficult car to drive out of the 3 we've got here today. But the ones that are left, they've done well to keep it going for as long as they have.
So I'm looking at some of the gaps, and Blake Neck is now 4 minutes 52 seconds ahead of Bo Albert. I'm not quite so worried about Neck being caught by the Kias, because Neck is 4 minutes clear of John King, who still needs another pit stop to get to the end. I think it's Bo Albert 4 minutes 50 back, who has taken his last service. We've really got to look at for the overall battle. I think at this stage, it's between Blake Neck and Bo Albert.
Yeah. And there's 3 laps to go, actually, for Blake Neck, with 30 minutes or so left in the race. I reckon with the pace Neck's been running, I reckon the race will actually be called at 14 laps distance with about 30 seconds to a minute remaining on the clock.
Yeah, that's how I've been seeing it as well. 2 hours 24 minutes of time. Neck's been running far too close to 10-minute dead laps. So it's that extra 4 minutes, some of which has been used up by the pit stop, but not enough of it to make this a 14-lap race per the time. So the stewards will wave the checkered flag at the end of the 14th lap, even if the iRacing automated race control doesn't do so. And the drivers, of course, have been very well briefed on that. That's how the format was going to run. So it won't be a surprise to any of them. And it's not a surprise to us either.
No, certainly not. So it does create an interesting conundrum, though, because can Bo Albert make up that time in the next half an hour? It's about 4 minutes worth of time, you said.
Yeah, 4 minutes 35 right now. And I don't know if to count the gap as 3 laps to go when Neck crosses the line or when Albert crosses the line. I think it should do it when Albert crosses the line.
It's going to be 2 laps to go when Neck crosses the line next.
Right.
So actually, Bo has even less time, really. He would have just started, or is just coming up to start his 12th lap at the moment. So,
okay, so I've done the numbers. Albert crossing the line now, 4 minutes 25 seconds behind Neck. Last lap took 1 minute 30 out of him. He takes 1 minute 30 out of Neck for 3 laps in a row. That is 4 minutes 30. At the current pace, Albert can do it by 5 seconds or so, but he's got a lot of cars to pass. One of them, Daniel Stevens, right now holds him up just a little bit and on his way into the pit lane. So it's all about, can Albert clear some of the Kias and some of the lower down running MX-5s quick enough on his way to catching Neck? And of course, it all depends where around the circuit he finds some of those cars. The race is on as far as I can calculate the numbers.
Yeah, it's going to be very borderline here at the finish, and it's going to be a very exciting one as well. So if you're out there listening and watching, please stay with us for the next 27 minutes, because my goodness, this is going to be an interesting race to behold as it comes to an end. So Bo Albert should do it by about 5 seconds if he has a clear track. I reckon it's going to be a lot more borderline than that. I reckon Neck has more than a chance here at the moment as we look at Mr. Albert.
And regardless of quite how you shave the numbers, certainly it will all come down to the last lap. It will be very, very close, which is exactly what race organizers want. Unfortunately, maybe they've not fully counted on how much the pace drops away in the Kias or how tough they can be to drive. Maybe our Kia drivers have just run into a little bit too much trouble. Bo Albert's now ahead of John King, who's come out of the pit lane. Bo Albert, now with 26 minutes remaining, has cleared all of the Kias.
Yeah, he definitely has. And speaking of the Kias, well, I don't think there's been a single Kia in the field today that has not had an issue of some kind. You know, John King, current leader, him and Albert, remember, actually came together on their first laps of this race. So King was obviously carrying a bit of damage. Stevens carried a bit of damage as well. Trevor Mack retiring. Dean Mole with his issues. And, you know, down through the field in the Kias, we've seen quite a few drivers have issues, as Albert himself came across a bit of a whoopsie there, almost had a big oversteer moment.
Yeah, pounding the curbs, and a lot of the way around the Nordschleifer. Curbs are very steep. You don't want to touch them at all. There's plenty of circuits where the fastest line is to take a little bit of curb. The Nordschleifer really isn't one of them. Very punishing on a car like this GT3 Cup.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, there are some places in that opening section of the Nordschleife Hatzenbach that you can take quite a bit of curb in a car like this, but you've really got to be careful how you take it, because it's very easy to unsettle a car through here. And the amount of different kinds of corners that the Nordschleife has, you can never set up a car perfectly for a lap like this, as we see a car in the lane. That's Hutchison, unfortunately. Carrying a bit of damage on that Kia, but looks like this is a scheduled stop for him.
8th and 9th overall,
Oh.
Daniel Stevens, John King.
Where did Stevens come from? In fact, what happened to King, rather, because he's fallen back, surely.
Must have happened on this lap. King struggling. Are you
King
taking
went
a
through the
look back
pits.
and find out?
He went through the pits again. So this is a legitimate battle, but King is now fueled to the end.
Well,
Is
that is
Stevens.
properly exciting. I'm seeing that both of them came in last time by. Stevens needed 42 seconds of fuel. King needed a minute. Stevens has clearly saved his splash for later, and King's clearly needed to take quite a bit more fuel later in the race. Their fuel strategies have converged on track right at the end here. Stevens coming out just ahead. Well, we'll see if he's got enough fuel to make it to the end, but he has the track position right now.
Certainly does, and this is exactly what I was talking about just a few minutes ago. This kind of racing nearer to the end is what you come here to watch the majors to see. And King really pushing hard, almost having the front end of that thing get away from him. Look at how hard he's pushing the car. He knows he's only got 2.5 laps left to stake his claim for the Kia win. Looks like the overall win may just be out of his grasp, but he can still go for class honours.
You know what? These final stops have also had a shake-up for 4th and 5th overall, because now Ashley Lear is closing back in again on Brett Geratz, and is just maybe, got an opportunity to put himself in front of him. So those two are battling as well, as we really hoped in the last 20 minutes or so. Battles up and down the field coming alive.
Absolutely. I love how everything just seems to come together at the end. Geratz with a little mistake. That's brought Lear right back in here. And Lear was one of the guys fighting for a podium earlier on. We thought that his day was close to done when he had his incident earlier on, but now both of these guys back into it, fighting for a podium finish. That's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, fantastic. And behind them, Bo Albert's just about to get past Daniel Etchison. Puts Bo up into 6th overall. He's still about a minute or so behind the battle of Geratz and Lear to catching them. But slowly but surely, Albert rising up that overall leaderboard.
Yeah, and closing in on 3 minutes, the gap to Blake Neck there. So it's still possible to get this done for Albert. He's managed to make his way past cars pretty cleanly on this run of his. Got to make his way past a lapped car from his class, though, because Stephen Williams, who's actually just clobbered the wall, is not having a great day by any stretch of the imagination.
Front right of that car, Stephen Williams, quite severely deranged, and the right rear corner also suffering from that as well.
Well, he'll be running a bit slow, and Albert will have to keep an eye out here, because this is coming up to the fast, dangerous section of the track. Looks like it may be over by the time we come onto the straight, so we'll see if crisis is averted here. Oh, Williams. Oversteer moment. Albert's just coming by here, so that's going to be no dramas for Mr. Albert. Neck, meanwhile, he's continuing to run those consistent 10:02 times. He's barely dropped out of them all race. The only blips have been 1:10:04 and his pit stop lap. Otherwise, he's been setting times very consistently in the 10:02s and 10:03s.
James Foster gets past Daniel Stevens and John King, and in the process, it's cost King a little bit of time. It's let Stevens pull just a teeny bit more gap. And from 5th place, Ashley Leah back in the pit lane for the 3rd time. He's been quick, but boy, has he found all manner of problems out there.
Yeah. Get the feeling he might have underfueled it, because he's getting ready to go. Yeah, that's a splash and dash there for Ashley Leah. Real shame. He was properly pressuring Brett Gerards as Albert now goes by. Gerard's just making his way down to the Sud Curve southern hairpin of the GP circuit now, so that should show you how close Bo Albert is to the overall lead of this race. Remember, Brett Gerard's currently in 4th overall.
When they crossed the line that time, Blake Neck went through, and then 2 minutes 35 later, Albert came across. So, 2 minutes 41 seconds. So, if Albert does 1 minute 30 faster on this lap than Blake Neck, then it'll be 1 minute 10 next time across the line. And that's absolutely within striking range on the final lap for Bo. If he can keep it out of trouble, keep it pointing the right direction. He's done all he's needed to do so far this race, but Blake Neck, well, it's not over. Blake Neck still has the high ground.
Yeah, absolutely. But he surely doesn't underestimate Bo Albert's power in a very literal sense, as that Porsche has quite a few more horses under the bonnet than the MX-5 does, albeit at the other end of the car.
So it's just a matter of consistency for Bo, and you really got to wonder in the car, in the cockpit, does he have the time, the technology, the ability to have crunched these numbers like we have?
Just brushed the wall. I'm so sorry. Once again, it happens, and I have to say it.
He was pushing so hard there, picked up a little bit of understeer, mounted the curb. Here comes the replay, and you'll see what Neck's done. I don't think he's done a huge lot of damage, but
scary moment for sure.
It will cost him some time as well, and time is absolutely of the essence for Blake Neck right now.
Yeah, surely. He's got that number 722 Porsche 911 GT3 Cup of Bo Albert bearing down on him. Gap is now 2 minutes and 17, now 2 minutes and 16 seconds is the gap from Neck back to Albert. And Albert's just made his way past Robert Mason, so he's now up into 3rd overall.
Live pictures once again. It's not going to be for the win, but it's still a great battle between Stevens and King for what is sort of class honours, if such a thing even exists, for the Kias.
Yes, indeed. Making their way through the latter half of the Grand Prix circuit now. And it's through these turns that you really find yourself getting frustrated when the front tyres start to wear down, because you want that front grip, you want that bite, so you can point the car at the exit of the corner and call it a day. But the Kia just does not want to turn when you've run these tyres down to the canvas, as they so often do.
Ninth and 10th overall is Stevens and King. And they've got some Porsches behind them that might catch them, but they've also got some Mazdas in front that they can pass, so they can still get a top 10 overall. And which is, I guess, what they're aiming for. They would have liked to have won. They would have liked to have made Kias the overall victors, but I don't think that is going to happen in this race. I think it's definitely between an MX-5 and a Porsche.
Yeah, definitely seems that way at the moment. And as we speak, the gap between Bo Albert and Blake Neck will come underneath 2 minutes. They are still on the second last lap of this race, and Neck has just exited the carousel. Bo Albert still coming through up to Bergwerk.
The anticipation is really getting to me right now. They started more than 2 laps apart, and gap closes, and it will be on the final lap at the current rate that we will see Porsche catch the Mazda. And if he gets there, then passing, you assume, would not be difficult. Even out of the final corner, the Porsche would have enough in a straight line to beat the Mazda to the checkered flag, so long as he can close that gap down on the final lap.
That's it. Well, Bo's in a very good position to gain some time here because he's just done that whole back straight section of the circuit completely flat out with no traffic to deal with. So he's just made up a ton of time to the tune of about 20 seconds in that sequence of time alone.
Yeah, indeed. A lot of the traffic's a lot further spread out around the track, and of course we have had some retirements compared to earlier on when the way that the cars were released meant they all ended up, all 3 classes at one point, on the same bits of tarmac, even though not on the same lap. But now more evenly spread as the race has gone on and things have occurred, and the different speeds of the different drivers have spread each of the classes out as well.
Exactly right. John King and Daniel Stevens for the Kia lead. They're still fighting it out. King has actually dropped back ever so slightly from Stevens, so looks to me like Stevens with a bit more of an edge in these last 15 minutes.
Stevens taking, from what I've seen a couple of times, I've had my eyes on a bit of a narrower line. King really tries to set up a late apex, maybe gets reasonable power down out of the corners, but just overall the corner speed, the getting in deep on the brakes is not quite working for him, especially through maybe the corners that don't lead onto a long straight, like through the Hudson back and almost all of the course, with the exception of things like Bergwerk and Schwalbenschwanz.
Yeah, well, you got to think King. Yeah, he is taking a much wider line through a lot of those corners, but he's looking after his tires a little bit more at the same time. Stevens' strategy of turning the corners into a V shape, it's good for pace right now, but I think in when the clock starts to reach 0, he's going to start having trouble with those front tires, and King might pounce.
So this battle going on between Kias, the battle going on for the overall lead between a Mazda and a Porsche. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to look at. There's, of course, how far down the overall order will someone like Blake Neck or Will Leslie go. While Bo Albert, I think, are definitely a chance for the overall lead. I don't feel like James Foster is close enough to also grab Blake Neck.
Speaking of James Foster, he just spun around.
Oh no.
Yeah, so literally as you were saying that, David, he was sideways. No damage, or it seems very little. But James Foster, he still managed to keep it going, but with a little bit extra time that he has no chance of making up in this last stage.
Yeah, so while it's looking likely that Neck could be swallowed up by one Porsche, I think he's done a good enough job, consistent enough job, that it's that and only that Porsche that might just get him. Albert has gotten past Will Leslie, now second overall, 1 minute the gap, and the white flag has waved for Blake Neck.
Indeed it has, and there is one car and one car only between Blake Neck and Bo Albert, and that is Matt Hunter in the 430 MX-5, down in 22nd overall. So Albert, it is the last lap of this race, and he's gotten himself where he needs to be. The gap is under a minute, 57.5 seconds at that exact moment just then.
So Albert now, barring any mistakes, assured second overall with a job to do on the final lap. The highest of your Kias, they're 8th and 9th overall. There's in your top 10, there are 2 Porsches, 2 Kias, and obviously right now 6 MX-5s.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a race of attrition, especially further towards the back of the field. This track bites, and it bites hard. Something that we say an awful lot about Mount Panorama down here in Australia, but the Nurburgring is like 4 Bathursts strung together in places.
Yep, certainly, without doubt. 85-90% of the track, if you're going around, you're going around into some Armco. There's not a whole lot of corners where you can get in too hot and find yourself with a lot of space to save it, like you can at maybe some more modern tracks, some more forgiving tracks. This is not those.
Yeah, certainly not. This is the cranky old grandfather of race tracks around the world. Definitely shows that with the amount of crashes that it causes in real life.
This Kia battle, King's gotten a little bit closer, but the two of them are cars 66 and 6, and together are the Kias of the beast.
Yes, indeed. Oh dear. These guys battling just as hard as they always have. In fact, Stevens carrying a little bit extra damage on the front than before, so King may have a chance here on the last lap. Stevens running a bit wide. Helps his exit, though.
Yeah, really, different lines, different philosophies, presumably some different setups as well between the two. They're averaging out to rather similar pace. King not dropping back, but not looking like a chance at an overtake. Again, it's the corner right there. Stevens throwing it in aggressively with a lot of speed, and King taking a later apex, and the two working out to about the same speed through the corner, but vastly different lines, philosophies, and body language.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really goes to show that you can make a lot work in a car like the Kia. There's not much in the way of setup adjustments that can be made. Really, you're looking at tire pressures and camber. Not much else otherwise. So really, it is the driving style that makes the difference.
King's quite close. Stevens looks like he's having a lot of fun throwing it around, but he's also got a lot of pressure from the driver behind. Stevens takes a bit more curb. King smoother, getting the power down, setting up the line into the next corner. Great to watch. My eyes are also on the fact Bo Albert's now 19 seconds behind Blake Neck, about halfway around the lap. That's looking very, very inevitable right now.
Yeah, relative speed of about 60 or 70 kilometers an hour down this back stretch that they're taking at the moment. Blake Neck hitting 170. Bo Albert doing in excess of 240, actually hitting 250 at the moment. So that should tell you the performance gap between these cars. And Neck is going to be in Albert's line of sight very soon in the next couple of corners.
Yeah, I think this is the one to watch. That a very fast section of the track we pointed out. It's where some of the speed difference is the greatest. The gap is now 5 seconds. Neck to Albert. Neck comes through the carousel. See, slower corners like that, the MX-5 doesn't bleed the time quite as quickly to the Porsche. Gap now 4 seconds. Neck can see Albert. Albert can see Neck. Bo Albert can see a race win.
Certainly can, and Neck, though he may lose this, can definitely be optimistic about the fact that he's pretty much confirmed second place right now.
Albert looks like he's going to try and wait for a sensible place to pass. He's not going to throw it up the inside, which is good because Albert knows he's got this stitched up if he can be patient. Neck very, very wide. Does Albert pass now? No, doesn't. Not yet. Albert is crawling at an effective Porsche pace, but just waiting for a spot. Bit of a straight line where he can squirt the power down, get to the inside, and through to the race lead. Bo Albert goes. After 2 hours, 20 minutes, he's finally caught the lead MX-5.
There we go. That is for the race lead. That is for position. That's for the win of this event. And look at Bo Albert's already celebrating with the flashing headlights. Yes, Bo, we can see you.
I can't see anything anymore now. My retinas are gone.
Yeah, turn down the high beams, Bo. You really need to invest in some new bulbs for those things. But Bo has driven, I think, the most consistently out of everyone here, along with Neck and Leslie. All three of those guys, I think, deserve big accolades for just keeping it out of trouble.
Yeah, certainly. We've talked almost ad nauseum about how difficult the Kia can be to drive around here. It doesn't mean the Mazda's easy, doesn't mean the Porsche is easy. A lot of people do find the Porsche Cup car quite difficult to drive around here, so it's a credit to the likes of Bo Albert, James Foster, and Dwayne Burns is moving himself up into 8th place right now. He's gotten past that Kia battle. He's now into 7th overall, so he's also had a good run with the Porsche.
Absolutely. But up the front, there is one person that we will be focusing on. Grunhöller, the Green Hell Restaurant, is now in Bo Albert's mirrors, as is the bridge over the circuit. He's only got Tiergarten to go, and he can call himself a race winner in the international division of the Majors Series. 1 corner to go, and now 0. Bo Albert flashing his headlights as he has done for the majority of this lap, but in celebration all the same. He takes the win, and a very good drive indeed. Massive props to Blake Neck as well, who's just coming in to Tiergarten. The fact that he was able to hold that onto that lead for as long as he did and keep the times as consistent as he did. Real testament to his ability. So he is going to take 2nd overall. Will Leslie, looks like, is going to follow him.
Yeah, so great run from Will Leslie as well. It's pretty close for some of the drivers back there. Dwayne Burns is definitely an opportunity in 7th overall to grab positions away from Brett Gerards and Robert Mason. There's only 10 or so seconds in that. Dwayne Burns, I think, started this lap in 10th, now finds himself in 7th and is looking at 5th.
Yes, indeed. So we'll have to wait and see how this goes. James Foster making his way. He's just making his way down the back stretch, but Mason and Gerards, looks to me like Gerards, he got 2 seconds on Mason on the last lap. Don't know if Dwayne Burns will interfere with that. Looks like he might not. They'll be coming up to each other on the straight.
Yeah, so as you rightly point out, Gerard's closing Mason just a little bit on the previous lap, desperately trying to get within the slipstream range as they come onto that very, very long straight that heads towards the finish line. He might not quite get within the slipstream, but Dwayne Burns is 7 seconds behind them right now. I think he will close up towards Tiergarten. It will be close between these three drivers. Mason weaving left and right, does not want Gerards to be able to close.
No, absolutely not. But it looks like Gerards might be just outside of slipstream range. Don't know if he'll be able to do that. Maybe he can hitch a ride with Burns. Oh, maybe not. Have a look at how quick he's going by. That's insane, the speed difference. It's like they're standing still.
Yeah, 90 kilometers an hour, so the same as if you're standing still beside a freeway, almost. So Burns closed that gap up. Now he's going to grab 5th overall. Mason, I think, just has enough to hold off Gerard.
Yeah, definitely looks like it. And Gerard's even running a little bit wide as well in the second last turn. So that's Rob Mason safe.
King's gotten past Stevens as well with while we were watching that other battle.
Oh, yeah, goodness me. That happened before the straight. At the mini carousel. The walk of shame, David. It was the walk of shame. And King managed to get it done by sticking one up the inside of Daniel Stevens and forcing him to avoid the banking.
Yeah, so clever car positioning from John King and what's basically the second last braking zone of the lap to take that position away.
Exactly right. Well, it looks like the vast majority of the drivers have finished. Ashley just crossing the line to take 10th overall. Good run from him. And the rest of our drivers are just circulating at the moment. Not many gaps or battles between the few drivers left lapping out there. We do have a pass, though, between Kia and Porsche. Gavin Barber making his way past Wayne Hutchison. That'll be for P13.
So a lot of last lap passes, exactly like the format is set up to give us. And in the end, I think our top 3 went Porsche, Mazda.
Indeed, they did. Unofficial race results. We'll go through them here. Bo Albert taking the win from Blake Neck and Will Leslie. As you said, David, it was Porsche, Mazda, your top 3. James Foster completes the top 4 in a Porsche. Dwayne Burns, top 5. Robert Mason, 6th overall and just held off Brett Gerards. In the MX-5s, John King taking the Kia win with Daniel Stevens, 9th overall. And Ashley, ups and downs, but he manages to get an overall top 10 for his troubles.
Yeah, I think 11th place goes to Dean Moll. 12th is Michael Skurlock. 13th, you mentioned Wayne Hutchison. Well, he's been passed by... goodness, I've lost track of that. We're still waiting on them.
Gavin Barber went by him.
Still waiting on them to cross the finish line to make it official.
Yes, indeed. So the rest of your field there on the screen, it's very unfortunate that we had so many retirees, but that's just the nature of this this beast. So now, as the last of the cars come round to complete their last laps, we do have the race winner in the booth with us, Bo Albert. Goodness me, that was quite the format and quite the race.
Holy cow is all I can say. That was awesome. I loved every second of that, and just having that race where every lap matters, and it's because in some races you can build a lead early and just protect it. You couldn't do that at all in this race. It was just attack, and I couldn't have asked for a better car or a better track to do it on. Absolutely fantastic format. So a shout out to Mike and the team at Majors for that.
Absolutely, we can definitely agree with you on that, Bo. Definitely was attack on attack on attack. It really caught a few drivers out in this one. You as well. I noticed on the last lap you almost had an appointment with the wall.
It was brutal. I knew it was going to be close with Blake, and I was looking at the delta time before the pit stops, and I knew that if I took tires, I had no chance of the win basically because it's 27 seconds, and you never know what traffic can do. So it wasn't worth the risk. So with no practice at all, I went with a no tire stop, and those last few laps were, in all honesty, absolutely horrible. They were the worst laps of my life, and had a very big moment at Hatzenbach, had another as well heading into Bergwerk. So some big moments, and I can't remember the corner name exactly, but coming up to, I think it was the last lap to MX5 before I got to Blake, that should have been my race over. That should not have been a save I could have held, but somehow got away with it, and somehow got the win.
Yeah, certainly. Well, it definitely looked like traffic was a big factor in this. Saw you come together with John King at Bergwerk earlier on in the race. It must have been a challenge getting used to the differences between the cars and how they affected you.
Yeah, it really was, and I'm really upset almost about that incident with King, because coming into that corner, I was catching him pretty quickly, so the move was on into Bergwerk basically, and he had a car and a half width of room to the left, and I had sort of committed for that, go around the outside, and off we go. But because of the front-wheel drive nature of the Kia, it was just, instead of him giving me room there, it was actually just the car pushing wide. So he's then come back to the left, and I wasn't expecting that at all. And well, we know how the Porsche brakes are, a little bit too much brake pressure, and around you go in a circle. So I applied as much brake as I could not to hit him, but just closing speed was a bit too much, unfortunately. So a big apology to King, and I'm glad to see that he at least got a top 10 result out of that. But yeah, he deserved better in that one for sure.
All right, and coming through into the next rounds of this series, Bo. Of course, you know the majors. It never lets up. Of course, this round we had the 2.4, and next round we certainly got it good as well because the Indy 500's up next.
I love the Indy 500. It's an awesome event. It's a little bit bonkers as well, doing, I think it's like 220 miles an hour heading through the relatively flat banking of Indy. It's always exciting. It's always a challenge. And setting the car up is always a little bit of a nightmare for Indy, but it's one of those events that I think every driver wants to win. It's on the Triple Crown. And well, if Fernando Alonso can't win it, then let's see if we can be better than Alonso.
Certainly. Bo Albert, thank you very much for joining us. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Yeah, massive shout out to the boys at Altus Esports, and especially Simon Feigl. I've been struggling a bit mentally with racing lately, and he's gave me a lot of tips, a lot of insights, which definitely came into good use here today. So big thank you to Simon, and of course our partners at Logitech G, Astro Gaming, Cams, Modem Simulation, iLiveries, and Cube Controls as well. They're all great sponsors of Altus, and we're very proud to have them.
That was Altus Esports' Bo Albert, your race winner. And David, we have now in the commentary box with us the Kia winner, John King from Kinetic.
Yeah, John.
Hi, guys.
Congratulations on your result being the fastest of the Kias, but it just was it the handicap, or did no one manage to extract the most from the Kias in this race?
I think it was a bit of both. We all of the Kias had a little bit of trouble, but I don't think we would have been close to Bo and Blake anyway.
In the end, almost 3 minutes off the overall victory. The Kia's a difficult car to drive in any circumstances, and chewing through fuel, chewing through tires, and not replacing either of them quickly in a pit stop. I mean, is there any particular corners that it's a handful, or is it just all around a different beast to drive?
Well, I've driven it a lot here. I drive in most of the VLN races. I've driven all the Nurburgring 24s, so I know the car and the track really well. So it's relatively comfortable for me. And the trick is to look after your tires. So, you know, I was hanging back those first few laps. Unfortunately, I had that incident with Bo, and it messed up my strategy a little bit. But even after that, it was fine. I was pushing pretty hard, but nothing too dangerous.
And 3 fuel stops for the Kias to get to the end. going in, what was your strategy for that? Because obviously you've said you had to alter it around a little bit.
I was always going to do 4-3-4-3 because that's the way you want the freshest tires possible with a Kia, and you need to play around with how much fuel you take on each stop, and that was the easiest way to do the calculation. So it didn't change very much. I ended up doing 3-4-4-3, I think.
Well, congratulate you on your 8th place overall result and fastest of the Kias. Any shout outs?
To the Kinetic team, of course, we've done a huge amount of work to prepare for this, and of course we got 2 more races to go as well. So shout out to all those guys and good luck for tomorrow. And to you guys, of course. The broadcasts are always brilliant.
Thanks so much, John. Reese, we've got one more.
We certainly have. I guess if this was a class race, you'd call him the MX5 winner, but he is second overall at the end. Blake Neck of Geodesic Racing. Unfortunately, losing that lead on the last lap, but you managed to hold it for a very good portion of the race.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to keep the lead until the end, but it was a pretty good race throughout.
I did notice in the InSim text chat, you said that it went better than you expected. Certainly, are you a fan of the format, fan of the cars, the track?
Yeah, the format's actually pretty fun. The only downside is that you don't get the blue flag when the faster classes come up, but it's pretty easy to monitor on your relative.
Righto, good perspective there from a driver. Blake, considering that you started this thing effectively on pole position and the MX-5s had the track to themselves for quite a bit, did you feel like you had a bit of control over how the race went for the Porsches and Kias?
Yeah, it did feel like you had a bit of control because you could place your car where you wanted and they'd have to find their own way around. So you dictate how things would go throughout the race.
Yeah, but I guess in terms of the first few minutes when you guys were just out there on your own, were you thinking much about the strategy at all, or was that something that would just come to you along the way?
Something that would come to me more along the way because I wasn't sure what the gaps would be like between the MX-5s during the first couple of laps, because obviously when they're together, the draft makes them quicker. So I needed to do a few laps before I could work out how I want to do this.
Rightio. Well, can we expect you at Indy, Blake?
Of course.
Of course, and that's a very very brief answer, but brevity is the soul of wit, I suppose. Blake, any shout-outs you'd like to give before we let you go?
Just a shout out to Alpine Stars, GoPro, Munch Media, In Principle Games, and ATKPL.
Blake Neck there from Geodesic Racing, the overall second place finisher here in the 2.4 hours of Nurburgring. That brings to an end proceedings for tonight, David. Much like Blake, I think we ended up having a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah, certainly. It's always bizarre to have this race between cars that are normally in their own classes, and we know we're watching the gaps, that there's a race going on that we won't see the result of until the final lap till we know who's going to win it. So unique format. I think it works pretty well, especially a big circuit like the Nurburgring, where the different classes don't actually lap or unlap against each other that often.
Yep, certainly. So hopefully we do see this format in action a lot more in the future. Definitely a lot of potential there. But for the major series, we do of course have the American and international and overall regions, American and Europe, in the majors over the course of this weekend. So you can tune in to the iRacing Esports Network over the course of this weekend. From our friends at Race Spot and GSRC, they will be taking you the action from the other 2 divisions of this series, the next round of which is the Indy 500 in May. So make sure to join us for that. subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network. Subscribe to SimSpeed TV as well over on our own channel. We broadcast as well. And make sure that if you're looking for a league race, you get into the majors, because it is certainly something to fight for. The Mario Andretti Trophy. Who's going to take it home at the end of this year? Continue to find out with us at SimSpeed TV. We'll see you next time.
This is the
Thank you, Fonty. Yeah, yeah, we heard that a couple of times. That's all good. Oh, excellent. Uh-huh. Great. I'll take it. Yeah, definitely.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now. He's got traction. He's got everything outside of both of them. Maloney. Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to him. Oh my God! Big crash. Oh my goodness! Half the field's gonna get involved.
Second very close. These guys I want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh no!
That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God.
No!